What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Fem Naruto quiet? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. A 7-year-old Naruto stood in front of her Hokage, fox mask in place and hands behind her back. You called? She asked in a curious voice. It wasn't often that she was called into the office for missions due to her young age. At 4 years old, she entered the academy and graduated a year later. Another year passed and she was already a chunin. Later that year she became a member of the Anbu and was placed in a team with the prodigies, namely Itachi Uchiha and Kakashi Hitaki, though she'd never tell them that she knew who they were. Though it seemed that after the clan massacre, they stopped graduating kids till they were at least 10. I have a mission that only you can complete. The Hokage started, pulling Naruto back in from her thoughts. As you know, due to the demon inside of you, people don't necessarily like you. However, the whole village thinks you're a boy. She nodded her head in understanding, remembering the hate-filled eyes of the villagers, partly encouraging her to become a powerful ninja despite them. Your mission is to attend the academy classes. Further details are in here. I expect you to burn the papers once you're done. The Hokage dismissed before Naruto zipped out the window and headed toward her apartment in order to fully read the details. Once home, she locked her windows and doors, closed the blinds and lit a candle before taking off her mask and opening the envelope. As she read, several things jumped out at her. Ordered to attend classes as a boy. Be the last in class. Keep an eye on the heir and heiresses of the clans attending. Reports are to be handed in every 2 weeks on any suspicious behavior surrounding the school, though immediate notification is required if danger to others is suspected. All of things spelled trouble for her. What bothered her the most was the detailed description of how she had to act while attending. To dispel suspicion of any abnormality, Naruto Uzumaki is required to score the lowest in all exams and during classes. Occasional skipping is recommended but not required. Till further notice, Uzumaki is to show romantic attraction to Sakura Haruno after a fourth of the year has passed. Physical skill sets should be subpar in comparison to the other students. Handwriting should be illegible. Attempt at illiteracy is optional. If mission cover is blown, immediate extraction should be expected. If Uzumaki is to reveal mission, reaction should be that of a blown cover. Staff and students are unaware of position and should be kept that way as this is an S-class mission. Naruto read the mission over and over in order to memorize the order before placing it over the candle and burning the papers, watching as she did so. With a sigh, she disposed of the ashes before opening the blinds. Looking at the calendar, she realized that she had a week to prepare for her mission. The first thing she did was grab a kunai and head to the mirror in her bathroom before cutting the 2 long pigtails on the side of her head. After cleaning up her blonde hair, she headed to her shower and washed her hair and body before preparing for bed. Though the sun was only just setting, it was a habit for her to get up early, and to do so, she liked going to bed early. Awaking the next day, Naruto rubbed her eyes and looked around her tiny apartment. Noticing a medium-sized box on her kitchen counter, she guessed that Kakashi had visited her, as he was the only one to have a key to her house. Other than Itachi, but she had a feeling he was no longer in the same county for obvious reasons. Opening the box after a moment's hesitation, she found an orange, baggy jumpsuit and she smiled. It was perfect to finish her disguise. No, she'd be able to fit the part of the village idiot. With a small smile, she went to her wardrobe and pulled out her usual bindings and wrapped them around her chest. It wasn't necessary, but it was better than not knowing how to do it when the time came. She then pulled a dark green undershirt and put the tight-fitting shirt on. After putting on some black leggings, she pulled the orange jumpsuit on and smiled at her appearance. Definitely passable by the standards set by the Hokage himself. It was still early and she decided to go see what he thought. Taking to the rooftops, she stealthily moved and was soon at Hokage Tower. She appeared before him almost out of thin air and gave the biggest grin she could to see what would happen. It took several minutes before the Hokage was able to guess who was before him. Naruto? He guessed and she gave a simple nod. If it weren't for the whiskers, then I wouldn't have been able to guess who you were. He replied with a pleased grin. Naruto woke up like it was any other day. The sun was almost rising, leaving the sky with a light glow. It was only when she looked at his calendar did she realize that his mission was starting today. It was still around 6 in the morning and class didn't start till 8. With the 2 hours that remained, Naruto thought that it would be best to make sure that she was in character. After binding her chest, she put on a dark blue skin-tight shirt and black leggings before putting the jumpsuit on. Styling her hair into messy spikes, she finished her look by applying makeup across several visible scars littering her body. She arrived a couple minutes before the ceremony was to begin and noticed several uneasy glances from parents and confused stares from the children. She placed her arms behind her head and casually waltzed in to attend the ceremony. Throughout said ceremony, she yawned, knowing how this worked. It was bad enough that she had to go through the system again, but this time as an idiot, it was going to be tough on her. The ceremony ended and the classes were divided. Teachers were assigned. It seemed that her old teacher had retired, and in the time she wasn't attending, a new teacher by the name of Iruka had taken the vacant spot. Class started and introductions were made. Listening carefully, she soon found out who were a part of a clan and who wasn't. Though just because her assignment was to protect the heirs and heiresses, it didn't mean she wouldn't protect the others. When her turn came around, she went to the front of the class, hand behind her head, and gave a large grin to the class. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I love ramen, and one day I'll become the Hokage," she announced. Satisfied with the stifled laughter, she inwardly smirked and headed to her seat. She soon realized that she was seated next to Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. "This'll make things easier for me," she thought to herself as she barely listened to the rest of the class. Already knowing the class material, she gave herself time to observe the class. Normally when observing, she would do it from a distance and hide herself, but no, being undercover, she had no other choice than to be subtle. She learned that Shikamaru Nara was a lazy genius, a prodigy if he tried. Sasuke Uchiha was a brooding mess, probably due to the recent massacre of his family. It saddened her as well. Not only had she lost a close friend, but also trust in her instincts. Hinata Hyuga was silent and shy, but she knew better than to think she was weak. Ino Yamanaka seemed to have a friendly rivalry with Sakura over Sasuke. Why, she couldn't understand. Kiba Inazaka seemed wild but loyal, a good ally if need be. Shino Aburame was mysterious at first, but she quickly learned that it was a sort of insecurity due to his use of bugs. Choji Akamichi was continuing to eat, even through the lesson, and Naruto guessed it was to keep his chakra up. Lastly, Sakura. She seemed weak and honestly didn't know why she had to pretend to like her. It would have been better if she didn't, but orders were orders. Sakura seemed to only know how to screech, though he had to admit that her knowledge of theory was above average. Quickly losing interest in class, she looked at the empty page in front of her and began to doodle something that seemed that it might be writing. It seemed that the Hokage put the optional illiteracy in not only for good measure but also to keep her amused while the hours slowly ticked away. With an hour left of school, the class went outside for an evaluation of throwing skills. Most students were able to get 4 of the 5 shuriken on the target, though not one got a bull's eye. Sasuke's turn was before hers and managed to get a bull's eye once, with the rest hitting close by. She heard him mumbling about how it wasn't good enough but shrugged. Naruto picked up the shuriken up and narrowed her eyes. To make it seem believable, she'd have to hit the target once while the rest went over the top. Happy with her plan, she did just that before looking up at her teacher and rubbing the back of her head with false embarrassment. Iruka seemed to just sigh before moving on to the kunai throwing. Again, most got 3 of the 5 on target. The Uchiha got 2 bull's eyes and Naruto aimed to miss all but 1, getting a bull's eye with the last one and saying it was luck. School ended and their parents were picking up all their children. Well, all but 2, the Uchiha and herself. Out of curiosity, she followed him to the pier before making a face and walking towards her own apartment. As she went, she heard the sound of glass shattering on the wall next to her and noted that a drunk had thrown it at her. Checking her surroundings, she noted that they were close to an ally. Luring the drunk into it, she got the drop on him, knocking him out and made it look like he collapsed due to the alcohol. Arriving at home once more, she sighed, wishing it was easier, but alas, she was the jailer to a demon that attacked the village 7 years ago. She wasn't stupid. She knew the demon was the 9 Tails, the supposedly most dangerous being in existence, made almost entirely of demonic chakra. With a sigh, she looked at her Anbu fox mask she'd hidden in a drawer for safekeepings and away from prying eyes. With that, she showered and prepared herself for bed, wanting the mission to be over soon but knowing it was just starting. It had been a couple months had passed since the beginning of the mission for Naruto Uzumaki. Last week she'd confessed her undying love for Sakura, only to be punched in the face and be compared to Sasuke. The week before that, her illiteracy had been found out by the class genius. And lastly, her orange jumpsuit was a pain. It was hot and uncomfortable, not to mention unbearably hot. Currently she was seated next to Sakura, who in turn was in between Sasuke and herself. Now we'll be moving on to the legendary Sannin. Can anyone tell me about them? Their teacher, Iruka, had asked. Naruto desperately wanted to raise her hand and talk about them, but alas, if she did that then her cover would be blown. Next to her, Sakura confidently raised her hand and went into an explanation about both Lord Jiraiya and Lady Tsunade. She could barely keep back a giggle at the missed Sannin. That's good, however you missed Orochimaru, the third Sannin, now ES class missing nin who has been in hiding for quite a while now. Iruka explained before debriefing about missing nin. Unknown to the teacher, one of his students had been a part of tracking down quite a few missing nin. Time seemed to fly after that when Iruka began to explain the three Sannin in more detail, something that hadn't really been focused on when she attended the academy before. Before she knew it, the school day had ended and it was time to head home. With a final attempt to get Sakura to go on a date with her, she watched parents pick up their kids and couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness. Though she'd focused on her training to deal with the pain, now she couldn't draw attention to herself by overdoing it. Arriving back home, she noticed something wasn't right. There was a flowering plant sitting in the corner of her room and a piece of paper on her bed. Cautiously, she padded over and picked up the paper. A note? Only 2 people can get into here, and Kakashi isn't the type to write notes, but Itachi should be long gone by now. She thought before reading it. You may be wondering why I disappeared all of a sudden. All will be explained when you graduate from the academy. For now, enjoy the houseplant. It may help coping. Sincerely, Weasel. As nice as the letter was, she couldn't help but feel cheated by her friend. Sure, she was young, but she was also mature. Right? She used a match to burn the letter, not wanted to know what would happen if it was found that she'd been in contact with a criminal. She snorted at the thought before turning to look at the plant. From her limited knowledge of flora, she guessed it was a flowering maple. I'll deal with it later, she mumbled to herself before getting herself ready for bed. The next morning, Naruto woke to the sounds of the early morning birds chirping on her windowsill. She opened her eyes and looked around her one-roomed apartment in a daze. Her gaze lingered on the potted plant in confusion before the events of the previous day returned and she got up and thought about what she'd do today. Naruto entered class a couple minutes before the bell rang and took it upon herself to talk to some of the others in the class. She noted a shy stare from the Hyuga heiress, but pretended not to notice as she went up to Shikamaru and Choji. It was risky to become friends with the lazy genius, but then again, if she only talked to Sakura, it would seem odd. Hey guys, what you up to? She asked, leaning on the desk. Not much. Such a drag, Shikamaru answered without lifting his head from the desk. You always think everything is a drag or troublesome, she retorted with a snort before going to sit in her usual seat next to Sakura. Sakura, would you like to go on a date with me? She asked with a wide grin, only to once again feel the pain of being punched in the face. Not that it didn't hurt, she's just had worse before. So mean, Sakura, she whined before Iruka called the class's attention towards him. Today we're going to focus on taijutsu with Mizuki so everyone can get the basic stances and movements. Iruka explained and she almost groaned with displeasure. The only thing keeping her from doing so was the cautious look that Iruka gave her and the hate-filled stare that Mizuki added. If only they knew I outranked them, she thought as she got up and followed the class to the training field. Entering a sloppy stance, she waited for one of the teachers to correct her, but after waiting a couple minutes, it seemed that it wasn't going to happen. She almost gave an outward sigh before feeling some firm hands placed on her arms. Almost. Just straighten out a bit, that way you can be firm in defense. She heard a voice, guessing it was Mizuki, tell her. She allowed him to alter her stance only to realize that he was not fixing it at all, including the obvious mistakes. She knew something was wrong, but she calculated what could possibly trigger it. Drawing a blank, Naruto realized she maybe should put this in her weekly report. Next came the movements. Starting off with kicks, she kept in the stance Mizuki showed her and prayed she wouldn't fall into her prior training. Failing, she got up and rubbed the back of her head nervously. "Ah, that was just a joke," she called out to those who had the nerve to stare at her. "Surely that old man would have been able to find the traitor without me having to re-enter the academy." She though sourly as the lesson ended with her falling over twice more and not being able to do anything to full strength. After heading home, she decided it would be good to start on her report for the Hokage. She included information about how the progression of the clan children were as well as the way Mizuki had been teaching her false techniques and lastly the worried looks that Iruka had been giving her. Naruto had to admit that she was used to the looks and glares she got on the streets, however, she had observed an improvement in Iruka. Especially after he had been informed of her illiteracy. She did not however include the visit from Itachi as it was unclear if the old man knew about what really happened or not. Either way, there was no way she'd add it. If he knew, then it was because he lied to her. If not, then she didn't want Itachi to be in even more trouble. The next couple days continued in pretty much the same fashion with some pranks here and there such as planting a spider on Ino and watching her freak out, and covering some of the desks in water. She had to say that her preference was leaning towards the spider prank due to its effectiveness at disrupting class. Each day when she'd get home, she'd water her plant and hope for a better explanation soon. If there was one thing she hated more than anything, it was waiting. She never had the patience to deal with recon or intel gathering. Her skills in that area were just as bad as her genjutsu and clones, excluding shadow clones. Though these flaws were due to the excess chakra in her system thanks to the 9 tails. Finally Saturday came and it was time to hand in her report. Dressing in her Anab uniform, she bound her chest and placed her mask on, keeping it that way with chakra. Naruto grabbed her report scroll and exited her building before leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Arriving at her destination, the Hokage Tower, she opened the doors to the old man's office without even knocking. It was her way of doing things and by now, everyone was pretty much used to it. "Old man, I have the report," she reported, placing it in front of the third Hokage before standing with her hands behind her back, one of the only gestures she used to show respect. "Thank you Fox, I'll see to it as soon as I can." The Hokage replied, and she knew that he meant after he finished reading his Make-out Paradise book. It was easy to notice the way he hid it in his sleeve, but she said nothing and turned to leave. The mission had been a long one, and boy did she miss her regular missions. Naruto was now 12 and had spent the past 5 years back at the academy, reviewing everything she already knew, and keeping an eye out on the traitor. She had a good feeling that she knew who it was, though you can't detain someone without evidence. "I think I'll paint the faces on the Hokage monument," she thought to herself. She'd gotten used to the obnoxious orange jumpsuit she wore every day, though she'd much prefer more normal clothing. Soon it would all be over and she could rest before going after missing Nin and other important missions. Her chest had started to grow while she was at the academy and she could now confidently say that it was beginning to hurt having the bindings on all the time. Though she still had to keep her hair short, she'd taken to using a small transformation to keep her hair short. It was simple enough not to be noticed and helped keep her chakra under control. If she'd done a full body transformation, then it would have been easy to notice the chakra coming off her. She still had around 30 minutes till class officially started and she knew that this was going to be fun. To say that her character had not affected her personality would be a lie. She loved playing pranks now rather than how she used to feel about them. They made her feel like a normal child. Well, if a normal child was able to climb the almost vertical cliff face that had the faces of the previous and current Hokage carved into it. It took around 20 minutes for someone to notice what she was doing and try to get her down, but it was too late. She'd already defaced the cliff face and was almost done drawing a mustache on the current Hokage's face. "So close," she whispered before releasing her hold on the cliff face and making a dash for it. To say that the Chunins that went after her were pathetic would be an understatement. They were not even able to detect her presence whilst she covered herself with a sheet. For crying out loud, it seemed that they should still be in the academy. She was about to head to class when she came face to face with a rather pissed-off looking Iruka. "Hi?" she offered weakly before being dragged by her collar towards the academy. Bound in ropes, she sat in front of the class hearing but not listening to Iruka's accusations and lecture. "Because you missed it, everyone will now review the transformation jutsu." Iruka finalized as the whole class groaned. One by one, everyone in class transformed into Iruka until it was her turn. What a waste of time. Shikamaru sighed while Ino softly grunted. We're always paying for your screw-ups, Naruto. Ino complained, to which Naruto inwardly rolled her eyes. Like I care, she responded before walking up to Iruka. Transform, she chanted as she gave herself long hair and pigtails and the body of what she hoped to look like when she was 18. All while making sure a stream of white smoke covered the important parts. It would be hard to explain how she knew what everything looked like. Her transformation ended up making Iruka feel lightheaded, only snapping out of it when she returned to what everyone assumed as normal. Naruto was laughing her head off at the reaction her teacher gave. I got you, she cried in joy. That's my Jutsu, she added, pointing and laughing at the pissed off teacher. Cut the stupid tricks. This is your last warning. Iruka yelled at her. After class, Iruka had dragged her to the Hokage monument to clean up her earlier mess. This sucks. Loser, she muttered, loud enough for Iruka to hear. The old man would have gotten someone else to do it anyway. She added under her breath as she scrubbed. You're not going home till you've cleaned up every drop of paint. Her teacher warned. It's not like there's anyone waiting for me anyway. She retorted, saddened at the thought before pulling herself together. I would like to start on my report though. She added to herself. She heard a sigh from Iruka before he called to her. Naruto? She looked up and glared daggers. What do you want now? She asked in a voice laced with agitation and disinterest. Well, I was thinking that after you cleaned this all up, I could take you out for some ramen. You know the good stuff. What do you think? He asked, not looking at her, probably due to embarrassment. Her eyes lit up at the thought. The one thing that was a constant was her love of ramen. She used to dislike the stuff due to it being cheap and the only thing that the villagers would sell her, but she'd learned to love it. Now that's some serious motivation. She called in pleasure. I'll have this clean in no time. She added, picking up the pace drastically in order to have it finished before her favorite ramen place closed. It took longer than it would have if she could use her Anbu training, though with Iruka watching, it would have been impossible. Once finished, it was already dark and the two went to a simple ramen stand for dinner. As she slurped her ramen, Iruka decided to ask a question. Naruto, why would you do that to the Hokage faces? Don't you know who they are? Iruka asked, confusion obvious in his voice. She finished swallowing her food before answering. Of course I do. Everybody does. They were the best ninjas of their time, right? The best of the best. Undefeated ninja champs, she explained as simply as she could before thinking of the fourth Hokage and the nine-tailed fox within her. And the fourth Hokage was the one that saved the village from the nine-tailed fox. She added with a sort of distance in her tone. Then did you? Iruka started before being interrupted by Naruto. Because I'm going to be better than any of them. Me, Naruto, the next Hokage. A ninja legend. Then everyone would have to stop disrespecting me and look up to me. She ranted slightly, still frustrated that even with her status, she still got disapproving glares and attempts at injuring her even on her life. By the way, I wanted to ask a little favor. Naruto chuckled nervously as she rubbed her hands together. Did you want to have another bowl? Iruka asked with a raised eyebrow. No, I was wondering if I could try on your headband. Come on please? She asked hopefully. Iruka looked confused for a moment before realizing what she meant. Oh this? He asked, pausing. No way. You can only wear the leaf headband when you graduate from the academy and become a ninja. You still have to pass the test tomorrow. Iruka explained. Inwardly Naruto was satisfied with the answer. She would never give her headband to some she didn't think deserved it, though she had to make herself look disappointed with the outcome. That is so uncool, she complained before Iruka started to chuckle. After dinner she headed home and took off her transformation and looked at her shoulder-length hair. She wished it was longer, but at least she didn't have to keep cutting it when she realized she could just use a transformation. Since Itachi's first visit near the beginning of her mission, she'd been visited once a year with new plants. She'd grown to like taking care of them as it reminded her of her former teammate. She noticed a new plant. This one growing tomatoes. Picking up the note, she read. It's been a while, so I thought I'd drop off a new one. I noticed that you seem to be lacking vegetables in your diet, so this would keep you healthy. It also happens to be my foolish little brother's fruit. Enjoy. It won't be long till I'll be able to explain the details to you. Just wait a little longer now. Sincerely, Weasel. She smiled at the thought before looking at the tomatoes growing. None seemed to be ready yet, so she guessed she had to wait. Regarding the details she wanted of the Uchiha massacre, a little longer wouldn't hurt now that she had already waited 5 years. The next morning, she wore her usual obnoxious outfit to the exam. She was almost late and entered just as the bell rang and decided to sit next Shino due to the want for silence and because it was one of the only seats available. And now we'll start the final exam. When your name is called, proceed to the testing room. The final test will be on the clone jutsu. Iruka explained, and Naruto couldn't help but to rub her face in frustration. Though she knew how to do shadow clones, regular clones were still a weakness to her. From the corner of her eyes, she could see Mizuki smirking at her obvious frustrations, and she had to wonder what he was planning. When her name was called, she got up and headed to the testing room and got into a weak stance. With a deep breath and a little self-encouragement, she attempted the normal clone jutsu. Surely it wouldn't hurt to do what everyone else was doing. Clone jutsu, she chanted, as chakras seemed to swirl around her. With a small bang and lots of white smoke, next to her a deformed clone laid next to her. She laughed nervously as she waited for one of her teachers to say something. She noticed Iruka's eye twitching with anger, and she couldn't help but think that he was going to fail her. "You fail," Iruka yelled, and Naruto half cowered at the volume of his voice. Once Iruka had calmed down, she turned to Mizuki to see what he had to say. "He's off, but his moves weren't bad and he did manage to replicate. This is his 3rd try, so you know he really wants to become a ninja. We could cut him a break and pass him," Mizuki stated, and Naruto looked at him and shook. She would never pass herself if this were all she could do. Mizuki. The other students created at least 3 effective replications. But Naruto could only create 1 and look at it. "It's pitiful. I can't pass him," Iruka replied calmly, and Naruto looked down. At least one teacher knows what he's doing, she thought to herself as she clenched her fist and looked back up in frustration. After the exam was over, he sat on the lone swing that was in front of the academy. She thought about how she was going to write her report to the Hokage about Mizuki when Pakun came up to her with a scroll. Reading it quickly, she realized that the Hokage felt something bad was going to happen soon. "Tell the Hokage I'm on it, but you better go now, I feel someone coming." She shooed the dog summon, who bowed his head and ran off just as Mizuki rounded the corner and came towards her. She looked up at the white-haired teacher, and when he signaled Naruto to follow her, she did, giving a passing and knowing glance to the Hokage, whom was standing next to Iruka. "Iruka is tough, though he's not against you," Mizuki started, and Naruto could tell that the man was nervous, but also excited. She furrowed her brows in confusion but relied. "But why? Why only me?" asking the man what she thought he wanted to hear. "He wants you to be strong with all his heart, but that will never happen if he goes easy on you. He's like you, you know." Naruto held back a sarcastic comment about how Iruka didn't have a demon sealed inside him. "No parents, no family," Mizuki continued, not realizing what was going through the blonde's mind. "But this time I really wanted to graduate," she replied with fake defeat, hinting that whatever Mizuki wanted to say, that he should get to the point already. She heard a soft chuckle and knew whatever the man wanted to say, it wasn't good. "Then I guess I'll have to tell you," Mizuki started, gaining her attention. She looked up at him in confusion before he continued. "It's a secret, but I'm gonna let you in on it." The man continued, and she looked at him with wide eyes. "He's getting to the point. I have to pay attention. There is another way to graduate. You just have to take the Forbidden Scroll and learn 1 jutsu from it in order to pass," Mizuki explained. Okay, she knew she had to act stupid, but did Mizuki really think that she was stupid enough to believe something like that? Well, it was her job now. After Mizuki left, she headed home and changed into her Anbu uniform and mask to inform the Hokage personally of what she was asked to do. With permission, she headed home with a fake Forbidden Scroll and changed before heading back out with the scroll to the meeting place. Shortly afterwards, Iruka came and noticed her sitting on the ground panting and covered in dirt. Though she'd managed to slip up in some mud on the way and twist an ankle, she guessed it looked like she'd been training and went with that. "It's all over," Iruka darkly chuckled as he glared at Naruto. "Caught me already. Not bad. You're quick," she complimented as she scratched the back of her head. "I only had time to learn 1 technique." She lied with a smile. "Listen, I'm going to show you this amazing jutsu and you're going to let me graduate and then everything will be okay," she informed optimistically. That's the way it works, right? Anyone who learns a jutsu from this scroll passes, she asked, planning to plant doubt in Iruka's head. Where did you that idea? Iruka asked, now completely confused about what was going on. Mizuki told me, she replied, not adding the appropriate suffix to his name. He told me where to find the scroll in this place. She added, now aware of the shock on Iruka's face. Is it so hard to believe that was the traitor? She asked herself. At that moment, kunai came flying towards them and Iruka pushed Naruto out of the way. She was distracted by her thoughts, but the shove the man gave her pulled her from them and she focused on her surroundings. The kunai managed to hit Iruka and her eyes widened. He'd taken the hit for her? Why didn't he dodge? I heal faster anyway, she thought before turning to Mizuki. So that's the way it is then? I should have known. Iruka half growled. Naruto, give me the scroll, Mizuki ordered. Don't let Mizuki get the scroll. It contains forbidden jutsu that can put this village in grave danger. Mizuki used you to get the scroll for himself, for his own power. Iruka counted. Both looked at Naruto with equally powerful looks in their eyes. Naruto, Iruka is just trying to scare you because he doesn't want you to have the scroll. Mizuki insisted and she turned to look at the white-haired man. Stop lying, Mizuki. Don't let him trick you, Naruto. Iruka growled. I'll tell you who's really lying. Mizuki chuckled darkly. No, Mizuki. Iruka yelled, but Mizuki still continued. They've been lying to you your whole life, Naruto. Since its decree 12 years ago. Everyone knows except you. Iruka's is trying to hide it from you even now. He'd do anything to shut me up. Mizuki added before being interrupted by Iruka. Don't tell him, Mizuki. It's forbidden. The brown-haired man yelled. The decree is that no one can tell you that the nine-tailed fox is inside you. Mizuki taunted as Naruto looked down at her feet, fuming that this was the argument going on. The fox spirit that killed Iruka's parents and destroyed our village has taken over your body. You are the nine-tailed fox. The white-haired man grinned at the sight of what he thought to be a miserable Naruto. Stop it, Iruka tried to call out, ripping his Chunin uniform in the process. They've all been sneaking around, hiding things from you your whole life. Didn't you think it was strange how they treated you like dirt? They hated you for just being alive. Mizuki continued his hate-filled rant directed at Naruto. Even your precious teacher hates your guts. Die, Naruto. Mizuki finished as Iruka finished freeing himself from the kunai. Naruto noticed the large shuriken coming towards her as well as Iruka trying to get in the way so she wouldn't get hurt. Sorry, old man, I guess I can't keep it up forever. She muttered when Iruka was close enough. With a simple back flip, she knocked Iruka out of the way and only managed to graze herself slightly on Mizuki's shuriken. What the? She heard and guessed it was from Mizuki rather than Iruka, the latter being too shocked for words as well as the fact that she was now sitting on him. You think I'm that stupid? Of course I already knew about the fox. Technically I'm not even a student or genin. She screamed at Mizuki. I graduated from the academy at age 5. She added with a smirk. Though I have to say that clone jutsu and genjutsu will never be successful with me due my large chakra reserves that rival only the cages. She joked before getting off the stunned Iruka and using the teleporting jutsu. Appearing behind Mizuki before the man could react, she pulled some handcuffs from one of her pockets and snapped them on his wrists. As a member of the Anbu and in the name of the Hokage, Mizuki, you are under arrest for treason, attempted theft of forbidden jutsu, and 2 counts of attempted murder. She informed before going back to the village and heading straight to the Hokage's office. Upon arriving, she entered without knocking and walked towards the old man as she pushed Mizuki in front of her. Ignoring the looks and gasps from other Chunins, she walked with an air of confidence before standing before the Hokage. Good work, Naruto. The old man congratulated before signaling 2 Anbu members to take Mizuki to the Torture and Investigation Unit, or T&I for short. Here's the fake. If I keep it with me, it will cause an uproar with these weaklings. She stated before giving the fake scroll to the Hokage. Her comment earned her sneers from the Chunins who had been looking for her. Oh, could you get someone to get Iruka? I had to leave him to make sure the traitor didn't escape. He's not hurt too badly, but I feel bad for leaving him. She added, before you go, I want you to turn up to class tomorrow and be put into a team. Your Junin supervisor will give you a message from me tomorrow. The Hokage informed and she nodded before heading out of the office, again ignoring the strange looks she got. Upon reaching her apartment, she immediately changed from her orange jumpsuit. Finally, I won't have to wear it. She looked through her clothes and realized that she didn't have much that would fit her. She'd definitely grown. She still had her Anbu uniform, but she didn't feel like wearing it. She decided to get new clothes when she could, but for now she'd use the tight, collared shirt and shorts she always wore under the jumpsuit and some metal guards that came with the Anbu uniform. With that, she got to take a shower before bed. Humming throughout the shower, she cleaned herself and tended to her swollen ankle. She knew it wasn't broken and the pain was bearable. Leaving the shower with a towel wrapped around her figure, the last thing she was expecting was a nighttime guest. "It's nice to see you again, Fox." The visitor spoke and she immediately knew it was Itachi. "I know I gave you a key and everything, but could you at least tell me you're here? I might have come out of the bathroom naked, you know," she replied before getting her pajamas and heading back to the bathroom to change. After being appropriately dressed, she came out once more and closed the curtains. "Are you going to explain why almost all your family is dead and why you left without saying goodbye?" she asked, sitting cross-legged on her bed while Itachi stood close by. The easiest way to explain was that it was the only option. Itachi spoke. Naruto looked up at her former teammate with a raised eyebrow and wondered what he meant. It was the only way to protect the Leaf Village. He added cryptically. Though Naruto didn't fully understand, she knew that Uchihas were known to speak little and cryptically. "I see. I do hope you're well though," she replied, looking him in the eyes as she spoke. "However, I do think Sasuke is hell-bent on killing you. Well, from what I've observed," she added to see a small smile on Itachi's face before it disappeared as if it was never there. "That's good. I never wished him harm. He never knew and never needs to know the truth," Itachi responded. She took it that he didn't want her to tell Sasuke. Deciding to change the subject, Naruto smiled. "Thank you for the plants. They're all lovely," she complimented. "I thought you'd like it. I know how the villages treat you due to Seal. I can say that most Uchihas felt the same," Itachi replied before pulling a box out of his robes. It was the first time that she'd really noticed his clothing. His headband from the Leaf Village had a scratch through it and he wore a long black cloak that had puffing red clouds dotted around it. Itachi's nails seemed to be painted a dull purple while his leggings were white and his sandals were dark gray, almost black. She took the gift he offered and smiled. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for everything," she replied, and again a small, genuine smile appeared on his face. "I don't need anything. This is all to say sorry for leaving you," Itachi confessed. "I must go now, but I hope we meet in the future," he added before exiting her apartment through the door. Once her former teammate was gone, she opened the box to find his weasel mask at the top. With a smile, she decided to put it next to her fox mask. Underneath seemed to be a smaller, more flexible version of the Anbu vest along with a small sword and a belt to attach it to, and long black fingerless gloves. She placed the box on the table and decided to wear them tomorrow. With a small smile on her face, she headed to bed and dreamt she was back on her Anbu team with Kakashi as her captain and Itachi as her teammate. The next morning, she got ready for the graduate class by binding her chest and wearing her high-collared skin-tight skirt and shorts. She pulled the vest over her head and looked at herself in the mirror. It was simple, but a little boring. "I think I'll dye the vest a different color," she thought to herself before putting the belt and holstering the short sword. She wrapped right thigh before putting her kunai pouch on. Lastly, she pulled on her gloves before adding the metal guards to her forearms. She smiled at herself before adding the transformation to her hair, then left her apartment, tying her headband as she went. She decided to make a quick pit stop at the Hokage Tower to quickly talk to the Hokage about how she should act with her genin team. Upon arriving, she entered the old man's office and smiled. "Naruto?" the Hokage questioned, and she stopped in front of his desk. "I was wondering," she started before being interrupted by a short boy with a long blue scarf. "Old man, I challenge you. I'm going to defeat you and become the 5th Hokage," the boy cried as he ran, shuriken in hand. That was before tripping over his own feet in the process, only making it halfway to the desk. Naruto raised an eyebrow before sighing. Another man came running in after the boy and stood in the doorway. "Something tripped me," the boy complained to the man, and Naruto had to keep herself from rolling her eyes. "Are you okay, honorable grandson? And by the way, there's nothing for you to trip on, it's pretty flat." The man added, and Naruto's eye began to twitch in annoyance with the interruption. Who's the shrimp? She questioned herself before turning to the man who seemed to finally notice her. Again with the shocked reaction? Is it really that shocking? She added to herself, inwardly groaning. Alright, you're the one that tripped me, aren't you? The boy accused, pulling her from her thoughts. She finally snapped and grabbed the boy's scarf. You tripped over your own feet, dork. She growled, ignoring the man's reaction to her manhandling the kid. All she heard was, honorable grandson of the honorable third Hokage. From the man, looking between the old man and the twerp, and noticed a cheeky smirk. What's the matter? I thought you were going to hit me, tough guy. Afraid because my grandfather is the third Hokage? The boy cheekily retorted. I don't care he's your grandmother. And I'm a girl, she yelled in response, whacking the boy over the head. Ignoring the reactions from the man and the Hokage, she left to calm herself down. She decided it would be best to head to the academy and be super early rather than do something else when he noticed the same boy following her. She turned in time to see him hide under a blanket but sighed at the inability for him to hide. Naruto turned back around and went on her way, attempting to ignore the boy following her. After a minute of the poor ability of the boy to follow her, she snapped and turned to see him trying to blend in with the wooden fence. Only, the sheet was round the wrong way. I know that you're following me, so just give it up. She turned and pointed to the boy. It's so obvious that it's pathetic, she added with a slight growl. In turn, the boy lowered the sheet and smirked. Saw through my disguise, huh? So the rumors are true. You're good, the boy complimented. You have no idea what rumors there are about me, she thought with a sigh. Alright, I'll be your apprentice and you'll be my trainer, he declared, and she raised an eyebrow in confusion. This has got to be a joke, she thought aloud, to which the boy protested. No, I need a new trainer. Please, boss, the boy pleaded. Boss? She asked, confusion. Yeah, you're the boss, the boy declared before repeating, boss, over and over again. Well, sure, I guess. She gave in, liking the way boss sounded, but she'd never admit it. Walk with me then, she added before heading towards the academy. The boy, whom she'd learned was called Konohamaru, had to leave by the time she'd reached the academy. By taking it slow, she managed not to be the first person in class. She sat down in the same row as Sasuke and they ended up ignoring each other. It was good considering just being with Konohamaru was kind of tiring. She heard the class door open a few minutes later and Sakura and Ino seemed to be fighting to get in the door first. Personally, she didn't care about their rivalry, but she still watched the entertainment. She watched as Sakura came towards her and was about to offer a polite greeting when Sakura pushed her out of the way, yelling, "Move it." As she did, rude, she thought to herself, eye twitching. Sakura greeted Sasuke before asking to sit next to him. Ino then complained something about being first. Then came the mob of girls. What's so good about the guy anyways? She asked herself. She'd never really been one for love, but the amount of people going after him was just confusing. Hinata seemed to be the only sane girl in the class. She didn't include herself as what was sane about a 12-year-old Anbu agent dressed as a boy attending classes she didn't need to for an S-class mission. She got up onto the desk in front of Sasuke to try and find what other girls see in him. They glared at each other and she only turned to Sakura, who was now screaming at her to stop glaring. Naruto turned back to what she was doing before being interrupted by the pink-haired screamer. Still a prick and still annoying. What's so good about that? She thought as she leaned closer. Now only centimeters separated their faces. That was until the guy in front of her decided it would be good to lean back and knock into her, resulting in an accidental with the most popular guy in class. After the initial shock cleared, she pulled back and immediately felt sick. What's with this killing intent? She thought before turning as seeing most of the girls in class glaring daggers at her and her eyes widened. Hey, it was just an accident. She tried to calm the now angry mob. After the brutal beating, a one that rivaled the beatings from when she was younger thanks to the demon, she sat next to Sakura with her head on the desk. She ignoring Iruka as he explained being a genin. When she heard her name, she looked up and waited for her teammates to be names. I hope I'm with Hinata and some other good person, she thought to herself. Sakura Haruno, Iruka added, and Naruto sighed in defeat with Sakura banging her head on the desk. And Sasuke Uchiha, Iruka finished. Naruto repeated her actions while Sakura cried with joy. After all the teams were announced, Naruto stood up and pointed at Sasuke. Iruka, why does a great ninja like E have to be on the same team with a slug like Sasuke? She asked impatiently. Sasuke had the best score of all the graduating students. Naruto, you had the worst scores. Iruka replied after a pause. He placed emphasis on scores and Naruto guessed that her acting was being referred to. She growled at the laughter from her classmates before muttering, I already outrank everyone in the classroom. Is this the thanks I get for saving your butt? Under her breath, unaware that a certain Uchiha was the only one to hear her comment. She ignored the light confusion on the boy's face and went back to ignoring everything, preferring to think about what jutsu she wanted to learn next. When class was dismissed, she noted that Sasuke left straight away, probably to get away from the fangirls. She rolled her eyes and left class last. On her way out, she spotted Sakura looking for Sasuke and inwardly smirked at the Uchiha's success. Just so you know, I'm not going to have lunch with you. An annoyed-looking Sakura stated. Whatever. Wasn't going to boost your ego by trying. She murmured as she walked past. When lunch ended, all the students headed back to the classroom and waited for their Junin to arrive. One by one, teams left till it was only Team 7. He's late, she muttered. There was only one Junin she knew with the capacity to be this late and not feel guilty. It has to be Kakashi. She thought, half pleased that it was someone she knew. Deciding that the best was to greet an old friend, she took the blackboard eraser and wedged in the door so that when Kakashi opened it, the eraser would fall on his head. You're asking for trouble, Sakura warned. Our teacher is a Junin, an elite ninja. Do you think he'd fall for that? Sasuke asked with a bored tone. Just then, a hand pulled the door open and the blackboard eraser fell onto a head with spiky silver hair. With that, Naruto burst out laughing and pointing at Kakashi, speaking incoherently. Sakura went into a full-on apology, but Naruto was too busy laughing to hear her properly. Well, how do I put this? My first impression is that I hate most of you and think you're all idiots. Kakashi bluntly stated. Of course Naruto realized he was referring Sakura and Sasuke, but guessed those two thought that Naruto was being referred to. Let's go to the roof, he said before disappearing in a plume of smoke. Once on the roof, he handed a scroll to Naruto, who took it and began to skim over it. Well, why don't you introduce yourselves one at a time? He suggested, focusing the attention of Sasuke and Sakura on himself rather than Naruto. Introduce ourselves? Well, what should we say? Sakura asked like an idiot. Things you like, things you hate, dreams for the future, hobbies. Things like that. Kakashi answered with a bored tone. Why don't you tell us stuff first? So we have an example of what to say. Sakura added. Kakashi gave a confused look to the best of his ability. Me? Well, I'm Kakashi Hitaki. Things I like and things I hate? Well, don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future? I've never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. Kakashi introduced himself and Naruto snorted while Sakura complained about only learning his name. Okay, your turn. Pinky, you go first. He ordered. I'm Sakura Haruno. What I like? Well, I mean the person I like. She started before looking at Sasuke with dreamy eyes. My hobbies are. She interrupted herself with a giggle. My dreams for the future are. She added before squealing. And, what do you hate? Kakashi asked, wanting to get the introductions over with. Confidently, Sakura snorted before answering, Naruto. Though Naruto ignored her in favor of reading the scroll. Okay, brooding emo next, Kakashi asked, turning to Sasuke in the middle. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and kill a certain someone. Sasuke explained and Kakashi just returned the introduction with a bored look. Last one, Kakashi said, turning to Naruto as the girl finished reading the scroll. Here, burn this for me, will you? Naruto asked, tossing the scroll back to Kakashi, who in return nodded and used a flame jutsu to do so. I can finally go back to normal. She smiled before dispelling her transformation and revealing two pigtails that ended just below her shoulders. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, botany, and training. I dislike waiting for ramen to cook, assholes, and deserters. My hobbies are comparing ramen and training. My dream is to become the greatest Hokage. Naruto cheerfully introduced herself. That doesn't explain the pigtails though. Sakura pointed out and Naruto smiled. I also happen to be a female. And no, I have absolutely no interest in the jerk sitting next to me. Naruto simply stated, shocking both Sakura and Sasuke. Kakashi didn't react at all. Did you know about this? Sakura asked, looking expectantly at Kakashi. Well, something like that, he answered. Well then, you're all unique and we'll have our first mission tomorrow morning. Kakashi started before being interrupted by Sakura asking what kind of mission it was. A survival exercise. I thought we were supposed to have a real mission. Not more practice. We already did this stuff at the academy. That's how we got here. Sakura complained. This is not like your previous training. Of the 27 graduates who just came here, only 9 will actually be accepted as genin. The other 18 will be weeded out and sent back to the academy. In other words, this is either a make it or break it test and the chance that you fail is 66%. Kakashi explained, a smirk hidden under the mask. That's how it is. Be at the designated training area and 5 and bring your ninja gear. Well, that's it. You're dismissed except Naruto. Kakashi added. Oh, by the way, I suggest you don't eat break fast tomorrow or you're going to puke. He finished, smiling at the way Sasuke and Sakura paled slightly at the thought of the test. Once Sasuke and Sakura had left, Kakashi gave a smile well to the best of his abilities. So how are you, Naruto? He asked and she smiled in response. I'm good, though I still get some glares and snickers due to my condition, she replied, pausing to think of a way to talk about the demon inside her without giving it away to her 2 teammates who were attempting to listen in by standing on the roof of the building. Well, it's good to hear that you're not being attacked anymore. However, I think that if Sasuke and Sakura wanted to know something, then they should just come down and ask rather than being rude and listening in to a conversation that has nothing to do with them. Kakashi said a little louder, calling out her teammates who soon revealed themselves with Sakura looking embarrassed and Sasuke looking indifferent. Well, if that's all, then I'll see you tomorrow. Naruto added, turning back to Kakashi so that he could see her serious face, indicating that they should talk in private. With a nod, Kakashi jumped from his place and headed from rooftop to rooftop. What did you mean about getting attacked? Sakura asked, little concern in her voice. Naruto thought for a bit before coming up with an acceptable answer. I was born on the day of the Nine Tails attack and some asshole thought it would be funny to scar my cheeks with whisker markings. Naruto started as she pointed to her cheeks where 3 scars like whiskers were visible. Because of these, the townspeople think that I'm the reincarnation of the demon and dislike me. One of the only reasons I'm still alive now is because of a select few Anbu agents tasked with looking after me. One of which was Kakashi. Naruto finished to see a wide-eyed Sakura and a contemplating Sasuke, a common trait amongst the Uchiha clan. Well, if that's all, I should go and get some ramen. She cheered, not leaving time for Sakura to ask more questions before speeding off towards her place. When she arrived home, Naruto looked around and spotted Kakashi already waiting for her. What did I tell you about coming through the window? Naruto asked sternly, to which he shrugged. With a sigh, she went and grabbed 2 glasses of water, one for Kakashi and the other for herself. There's something I needed to tell you. She started, sitting down at her dining table. Kakashi followed and sat opposite and waited for Naruto to start talking again. Weasel has been visiting me and leaving me potted plants, the last one being that tomato plant over there. Naruto explained, pointing at the plant, which now seemed to be ripe with fruit. Kakashi raised an eyebrow as he began to notice the amount of plants decorating the small apartment. The visit started when my mission first began and the most recent was last night when he gave me some clothing and his Anbu mask. She added with a small sigh. Kakashi nodded, frowning slightly at the sigh. He told me that the Uchiha massacre was a necessity. I don't understand though. If it was, then why not kill Sasuke too? If it wasn't needed, then why kill the clan at all? Naruto confided, hoping that maybe Kakashi knew something she didn't. It's apparently something that only Weasel and the Hokage know. Even if I knew, it wouldn't be my place to tell you. Kakashi replied after a moment of thought. She nodded at the answer and guessed it was the only thing she'd get out of him. Now that I seem to answer some of your questions, I need to ask some of my own. Kakashi informed and Naruto looked up, confused. I want to know what was in that scroll. You'd never give up your cover so easily unless it was something in the scroll that made you do so. Naruto nodded at the statement and recalled what she was told. Well, apparently there has been information from Jiraiya's spy network telling us that Orochimaru has his eye on the Sharingan. It's kind of obvious that he'd come after Sasuke rather than Itachi considering the difference in age and overall strength. Naruto explained, summing up the scroll. I was told to continue into the Genin team so that I don't arouse suspicion of my rank, though I'm now to reveal that I'm a girl. She added before raising her arms behind her head to stretch. It seems the council wants me to try and swoon the Uchiha, however the old man filed it into the optional section. Naruto finished before removing her hands from behind her head. I've always been meaning to ask, why do you get the optional things to do in your mission anyway? Kakashi asked, his only eye focused on the blonde in front of him. Well, unlike you, I happen to be a teenager who is unpredictable, annoying, and dislikes most figures of authority. If they made everything in my missions mandatory, then I become bored, and the pricks on the council decided that if became bored, then I may experiment with the 9 tails, resulting in the end of the world. She sarcastically described herself before slightly exaggerating the way the civil council thought of her. Kakashi took this into consideration before nodding slightly. I guess that makes sense. He replied thoughtfully before looking around the apartment they were in. It was small, and he knew she could afford a better place with the Anbu pay she gets, which is considerably more than the average agent due to the sheer amount of missions, both solo and team, Naruto does. Naruto studied Kakashi for a moment as his gaze washed over her place. That reminds me, what did you get as your orders? She asked, slightly startling the Junin. What makes you think I got any orders? He asked casually. Well, it defiantly wasn't a coincidence that the both of us are Anbu agents, or in your case former, and it defiantly wasn't in the scroll you handed me. She cheekily replied, sticking her tongue out at her teacher. Well, tomorrow I'm to test the abilities of the other two with the bell test. I don't think you had that test when you became Genin. But I also have to get a reading on the strength you're allowed to use on missions and such. Kakashi responded as he placed 2 bells on the table in front of them. You're right, my Genin teacher was Sume Inuzuka. We did our test by attempting to train some of the newest pups from their clan. She replied, remembering the time she spent with her team's dogs and wondered how the pups they managed to train were doing now. I guess I should get going in order for you to get sufficient rest for tomorrow. We wouldn't want you falling asleep now, would we? Kakashi asked with a grin, something you could only tell by looking at the only visible feature of his face, his right eye. Naruto responded by rolling her eyes at the immature Junin. As she was about to turn, Kakashi called out, and thank goodness you ditched the orange jumpsuit. Not that orange doesn't suit you, but that thing was hideous. If I remember correctly, you were the one that gave it to me, Kakashi. Naruto playfully warned. Well, see ya tomorrow. He dismissed with a wave of his hand to add affect. She smiled and watched him leave through her window after grabbing the bells. Though it irritated her when people went through her window, Naruto decided that she'd let it go this time. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Naruto found that she hadn't had much sleep and grumbled as she got ready. Looking at the limited clothing options available, she sighed before putting on some full-length black tights that were a size too small and ended up being a little too form-fitting in her opinion. Her usual bindings, a gray jacket-like vest with a high collar only zipped up just above her bindings, her black fingerless gloves, some metal plates, her thigh and hip pouches, her headband, before finally putting on her sandals. As Naruto looked at herself in the mirror, she decided to do her hair in a simple braid to the right of her face. With a final look at her appearance, she smiled before heading off to the meeting point. Upon arriving, she noticed that both Sasuke and Sakura had arrived at the same time as her. She had expected the Uchiha to be here early, however the Haruno had surprised her. Thinking back, it always seemed that the pink-haired girl would arrive about 5 minutes before class started along with the other blonde in the class. Sakura yawned a greeting, which Naruto returned in the same fashion while Sasuke said nothing. Deciding to get more sleep, Naruto sat down and laid her head on her knees in a futile attempt to rest. Her 2 teammates however wanted to meet their new teacher standing up, though Sakura soon joined Naruto in sitting down. Only once the sun was already high in the sky did Kakashi join the trio while they tried to stay awake. Morning everyone, ready for your first day? Kakashi greeted casually as if he were out for a morning stroll. You're late, an irritable Sakura and a cranky Naruto yelled to the one-eyed Junin. Well, a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way. The man lazily excused himself. Naruto growled in response, to which Kakashi took no notice, considering that he was used to this when they did missions together in the Anbu. Well, let's get started, Kakashi added, walking over to a conveniently placed long and placing a timer on it. It's set for noon. Your assignment is very simple. You just have to take these 2 bells from me. That is all there is to it. If you don't get them by noon, then you go without lunch. Kakashi explained, all while giggling the bells in front of the faces of the 3 genin. You'll be tied to those posts over there and be forced to watch me eat my lunch. He added, wait a minute, there are 3 of us and only 2 bells. Sakura announced, stating the obvious. Well, that way at least one of you will be tied to a post and ultimately disqualified for failing to complete the mission. That one goes back to the academy. Kakashi replied, playfully jingling the bells more. Then again, the man started becoming serious. All 3 of you could flunk out. You can use any weapons including shuriken. If you're not prepared to kill me, then you won't be able to take the bells. Those weapons are too dangerous. Sakura cried, eyes wide in disbelief. However, Naruto countered that by laughing, knowing that if she could go at full strength, then she'd be able to fight toe-to-toe with Kakashi, if not better. When I say start, you can begin, the man added. Without waiting for the signal to go, Naruto went straight to one of her pouches and pulled out a kunai and charged Kakashi. No warning was given before the one-eyed man came behind the blonde, holding the arm with the kunai in it at the back of her neck. Don't be in such a hurry. I didn't say start yet, Kakashi warned, to which Naruto growled in frustration, all while keeping her body calm. Get ready, and start, the man announced before the 3 dashed from their current position. The blonde could tell that Sasuke was somewhere in a tree while Sakura was under a bush. Out of the 2, Naruto hated to admit that Sasuke was in a better position. In comparison, she had only moved back a couple meters. Her arms were crossed and her looked determinedly at Kakashi. You and me, right now, fair and square, let's go, Naruto announced, half glaring at the man in front of her. She watched as Kakashi rolled his only visible eye at her, and the blonde could tell he was resisting the temptation to face palm. You know, compared to the others here, you're a little weird, the man replied before wishing he hadn't fallen for her bait. Naruto smirked, knowing that she has him, before responding. Oh yay? The only thing weird here is your haircut, she teased, knowing he didn't really like his hair being pointed out. She charged at the man, bare-handed, and noticed how he reached into his hip pouch. She stopped in her track and tried to guess what he was up to. Part 1. Taijutsu. The physical part, Kakashi murmured, loud enough for the blonde to hear. As she heard him, she narrowed her eyes as she realized what he was going for. Moments later, her suspicions were confirmed as the man in question pulled out a little orange book from the pouch, slightly posing as he did. I should have known, Naruto thought to herself in slight disgust. Why are you reading that book? Naruto sneered slightly. Why? To find out what happens in the story, of course. Don't let it bother you. With your weak attacks, it doesn't matter if I'm reading or whatever, Kakashi casually stated, trying to get under her skin. She clenched her fists. His insults were working and getting her all riled up. She dashed in with poor style and aimed a punch at the man's head, only to be stopped by a palm. I bet you're enjoying beating me for once, she whispered before moving onto a roundhouse kick, then a punch, all attacks dodged, of course. She felt Kakashi's presence behind her and guessed he aimed to humiliate her more with his special technique of his. Not that she hadn't suffered it before. Don't let your enemies get behind you all the time, Kakashi warned, loud enough for the 2 actual genin to hear him. Naruto, get out of there. He's going to destroy you, Naruto heard Sakura warn. Destroy is pretty much on the mark, Naruto thought, bracing herself slightly. Too late. Leaf Village Secret Finger Jutsu. Kakashi started before prodding his fingers up her backside sharply and flinging her several meters into a nearby river. 1,000 years of death. He finished, and Naruto couldn't help but groan at the name he'd given the technique. She sat at the bottom of the river for a little bit, trying to come up with a suitable plan. After a couple seconds, she decided on a plan of action and summoned several shadow clones before pushing of the riverbed and swimming to the shore after throwing 2 shuriken. What are you doing now? You know you won't get lunch unless you take a bell by noon, Kakashi blatantly pointed out to a soaked Naruto. I know. You told us already, Naruto countered. You look pretty wobbly for someone who's going to surpass the Hokage. The man added despite with her. At that moment, Naruto heard her stomach growl before two fainter ones, whom she guessed belonged to Sasuke and Sakura, echoed hers. You told us not to eat breakfast. How can I fight when I'm starving to death? The blonde growled irritably at the Junin. Suddenly, out of the water erupted 6 of her shadow clones ready to attack her supposed teacher, who just casually looked up at the clones closing in. Great technique, but I don't think you can maintain it for very long. You talk like you're the best, Naruto, but you're still the worst student. You can't beat me with this jutsu. Kakashi lectured as the solid clones rushed him. Seemingly out of nowhere, a 7th clone came from behind and jumped the Junin, causing him to become shocked and unable to prepare for the oncoming attack. Didn't you say don't let your enemy get behind you? The 8th Naruto teased as the rest of the clones grabbed Kakashi's legs. The original Naruto leapt in front of the struggling man and prepared to punch him. This is for nailing me in the butt earlier. She growled, preparing her fist. She noticed that Kakashi switched places with one of the clones and was now nowhere in the vicinity, and Naruto cursed her luck of having to act as an idiot. After the punch, she began an all-out brawl with her clones before quickly dispelling the jutsu. She noticed one of the bells on the ground and had to resist rolling her eyes at the stupid things she had to do for her cover. As she reached to pick up the bell, a rope tied itself around her ankles and hung her upside down from a tree branch. She watched Kakashi pick up the bell and prepared herself for a speech that was really meant for the other two. Think before you use a jutsu, or else your opponent might use it against you. Oh, and also, if the bait is obvious, don't take it. A ninja must see through deception. Kakashi lectured as she growled in frustration at the thought of being humiliated while on duty like this. Without a moment's notice, shuriken came shooting out from Sasuke's hiding place, and she watched as Kakashi quickly did the hand signs for the substitution jutsu before the shuriken struck. Are you out of your mind, Sasuke? You went too far, she screeched, pretending that she didn't know any better. Just before the body hit the ground, Ilong replaced what would have been Kakashi's body. A rustling of leaves told Naruto the Uchiha had seen this and was now on the run to avoid a beating from the man he'd tried to impale. Sakura's scream filled the air, and Naruto guessed that the Haruno was going to be a victim of genjutsu. I ninja must see through deception. I already know that bloody dog. She muttered bitterly to herself, letting the act drop now that no one was around her. Grabbing a kunai, she cut through the rope that bound her ankles before clinging to the trunk of the tree with chakra. It would be just like Kakashi to put another rope trap straight under me. She thought, slightly bitter before confirming her suspicions with a stick lying around. Naruto looked at the height of the sun and guessed it was only a couple minutes till noon. Noticing the 2 prepared boxed lunches by the memorial site, she headed over and waited for Kakashi arrived. It wasn't even a second later when the man appeared next to her. Are you done terrorizing them yet? She asked, not looking at the one-eyed man. Well, almost. But I do have to tie you to a post now. We can't have you spoiling the test now, can we? Kakashi asked, a mischievous glint in his only visible eye. She glared at him, but didn't verbally protest as she was tied to the middle post. The alarm rang out, signaling that it was now noon, and both Sasuke and Sakura came out from the forest to see their third teammate already tied to a post. The 2 who just arrived sat on either side of Naruto and waited for Kakashi to them the verdict. Oh, stomachs growling, huh? That's too bad. Oh, by the way, about this exercise, well, I've decided. I won't send any of you back to the academy. The man announced, surprising everyone, including Naruto. I passed? All I did was faint and fall over. Do you get points for that? Sakura asked, causing Naruto to roll his eyes ever so slightly. So that means all 3 of us. Naruto started before being interrupted by Kakashi. Yes, all 3 of you are being dropped from the program permanently. Naruto's eyes widened as Sakura stopped mid-cheer and Sasuke glared at the Junin. You don't think like ninja, you think like brats. Kakashi added, stirring the Uchiha, who in turn charged Kakashi, not listening to the concerns of his supposed teammates. The result of the attack had Sasuke pinned under the white-haired Junin as Sakura raged about letting her Sasuke go. You don't know what it means to be a ninja. You think it's a game, huh? Why do you think we put you on squads? Did you consider that question for one moment? You never realized what this exercise was about, did you? Not even close. It determines if you pass or fail. Use your head. 3 people on a squad. Why do you think we would do that? It's so basic. Teamwork. It's too late now, but if all three of you had worked together then maybe you would have been able to get the bells. Kakashi lectured, a dark look in his eyes. But wait a minute, you set it up with 3 people but only 2 bells. If we'd worked together and got the bells, then only 2 of us could keep them and that would lead to group conflict and the squad would break up. Sakura countered. Exactly, I purposely pitted you against each other. I wanted to see if you could overcome that and put the squad ahead of yourselves. A genin should have a natural feel for teamwork. But you, it never even crossed your mind. The man simply replied. Sakura, you obsessed about Sasuke who was gone. While Naruto, who was right in front of you, and you wouldn't lift a finger to help him. Naruto, you do everything on your own. Everything. And you Sasuke, thought that the others were so far beneath you that you thought that they are worthless. Arrogance. Ninja missions are carried out in squads. Of course you need individual skills, but teamwork is the most essential element. Every ninja understands this. When individuals put themselves above the squad, missions can lead to failure and death. For example, kill Naruto now or Sasuke dies. That's what happens on a mission. The enemy's got a hostage and you've got an impossible choice and someone ends up dead. On every mission your life is on the line. Kakashi lectured once more, trying to get the message of being a ninja to the 2. When the man got off of Sasuke, he walked over to the stone before looking once more at the children in front of him. Have you looked at this stone? The names engraved on it? They are ninja who are honored as heroes in our village. The man spoke, grief thick in his voice. Naruto wanted to make a remark about wanting to be on the stone as well. However, she knew that Kakashi's old teammates are on there and didn't want to be disrespectful, so she bowed her head in respect. These are a special kind of hero. They are all KIA, killed in action, Kakashi explained, looking somberly at the 3. A moment of silence was shared between the 4 before the man spoke up again. This is a memorial stone. The names of my closest friends are engraved here. Kakashi looked over at the stone once more as another silence was shared. Okay, I'm going to give you one more chance, but I'm going to make it much harder on you. You'll have 3 hours to get a bell. Eat lunch now to build up strength. But Naruto doesn't get any. It's punishment for breaking the rules and trying to eat early. Kakashi warned, making the blonde growl as the man lied about her trying to eat. And if anyone tries to feed her, that person will immediately fail. I make the rules, you follow them. Got it? The man added, attempting to scare the other 2 off. Shortly after, Kakashi disappeared, but Naruto could still feel his presence and chakra in a tree not too far off. She watched as Sasuke and Sakura began to eat their boxed lunches before a growl from her stomach erupted. This is no big deal, I can go without eating for days, for weeks. No big deal. She growled irritably due to the lack of food and sleep. Though another growl discouraged her and she hung her head. Here, Sasuke offered and Naruto had to look up before noticing the boxed lunch he offered. What no Sasuke? You can't do that. You heard what he said. Sakura suspiciously said, looking around for the missing teacher. Kakashi's gone. We need to get those bells as a team. If Naruto's hungry, then she'll be weak and ineffective. That hurts the team and jeopardies the mission. The Uchiha explained, causing Naruto to inwardly growl at the comment. It was then that Sakura offered her lunch, saying that she was on a diet before quickly lying about not needing as much food. I can't move my hands, you'll have to feed me. Naruto admitted, causing Sakura's eye to twitch in frustration. With a little encouragement, if it could be called that, Sakura used her chopsticks to feed Naruto while muttering under her breath that she was glad Naruto wasn't a boy. You broke the rules. Now I hope you're ready for punishment. A seemingly pissed off Kakashi warned before quickly going through some hand signs. Some dark thunderclouds seemed to appear out of nowhere, and if Naruto had to guess, it was a genjutsu. Now, any last words? The man demanded. But you said that there were 3 of us, and that's why. Sakura quickly interrupted, quickly being unable to find the right words as to why she did what she did. Naruto was having a hard time keeping her mouth shut, but was glad Sakura said what the blonde had wanted to say. We're all on this squad and we're all in it together. Sasuke finished for Sakura. Yay, that's why they gave their lunch to me. Because the 3 of us are one. Naruto added, unable to stay silent. The 3 of you are one? Is that your excuse? Kakashi asked darkly. Then, you pass. The man added after no one interrupted him. When the 3 looked at him dumbly, he repeated that they passed. You're the first squad to succeed. The others did exactly what I said and fell into every trap. They couldn't think for themselves. A ninja must see through deception. In the ninja, those who break the rules are scum. That's true, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Kakashi explained, glad that at least one team was able to pass his test. The exercise is over. Everyone passes. Squad 7 starts its first mission tomorrow. The man announced, posing similarly to the green beast of Konohana, a probable side effect of the eternal rivalry that they shared. While Sasuke and Sakura walked off with Kakashi, Naruto struggled to free herself from the post she was tied to. I knew they'd do this. It happens every time. You guys forgot to untie me. Naruto screamed at Kakashi and the others. With a growl of frustration, she pulled a kunai out of her hip pouch and managed to cut the ropes to set herself free. Kakashi is going to pay for this. She grumbled, trying to think of a good way to get the message across. The idea of attaching his furniture to the ceiling came to mind and Naruto smirked at the thought. Upon arriving at the Hitaki household, she let herself in by picking the lock. Looking around and sparse furniture, she smirked. This'll be easier than I thought, she told herself before getting to work, starting with the little furniture he had by the entrance to his home. After a few hours, Kakashi had still to return home and Naruto was glad considering that she'd just finished. Now it looked like Kakashi was crazy. She knew he'd end up being lazy and just used chakra to walk on the ceiling. However, not everyone had as much chakra as her. Nor did most people have a demon inside them, but that was besides the point. There was just no way that Kakashi would be able to live completely on the ceiling, especially when it came to sleeping. Now bored considering that she'd turned Kakashi's upside down, Naruto decided to head to the library to see if there were any new books on Funinjutsu. Upon arriving, she noted that very few people were around and the librarians seemed distracted. Good, she thought to herself as she headed towards the jutsu book, more specifically, the books on sealing. Ever since she'd discovered the complex seal on her stomach, Naruto had become fascinated by the sheer beauty of the seal. Not knowing at the time that it was holding back something deadly. She sighed at the few books she saw on her favored subject, but picked out a newer looking one and headed to one of the tables. As she sat, she heard whispering. Straining her ears, Naruto listened in on the almost silent conversation going on behind her. Go on, Tenten. I'm sure she's not being serious about the book but rather youthful. You should go over and ask. A young, yet somehow matured voice whispered. How a voice could be both young and mature sounding was a mystery to even her. Maybe I could ask a Nara or something, she thought to herself before being interrupted by a girl, barely older than herself. Hi, I'm Tenten and I was wondering if you were using that book on Funinjutsu. A rather feminine voice came from beside her. Naruto cocked her head and looked at the girl. She had brown hair in two buns, brown eyes, and slightly tanned skin. With another overall glance at the girl, Naruto guessed that Tenten had a civilian background, as no notable features of any clan were visible. I'm sorry, but I'm learning Funinjutsu currently. There are other books, so I hope you don't mind me using this one. Naruto replied politely, guessing it would be best to stay on the girl's good side for now. Tenten looked at her in confusion, noting the advanced level of sealing the book was on. It's alright, I just wanted to see if there was a way to increase the capacity of the seals in my scrolls. Tenten admitted and Naruto smiled. I might be able to help you with that. Naruto offered after a moment's thought. Befriending ninja her age would be beneficial for the future, and it was a bonus that they didn't know about the 9 tails inside her. Tenten smiled before pulling out several concealed scrolls and sitting down next to Naruto. Examining the seals, Naruto realized that they were rather basic. Would you mind getting me some ink and a brush? She asked Tenten, who eagerly nodded before getting up to look for the required tools. Upon returning, Tenten handed a new set of ink and brushes, making Naruto smile. She'd never really had the chance to work with new tool considering everything she buys is second-hand. By the time Naruto had finished recreating the seals, Tenten seemed to have lost the ability to speak. Finished, Naruto confirmed in an attempt to pull her new friend from a trance. I've never seen seals like these before. Tenten admitted sheepishly. It's because I redesigned the storage seal for my own purposes. These should increase carrying capacity by up to 60% while reducing chakra costs by 20%. The blonde explained, scratching the back of her head. What are these, Tenten? A polite voice asked and Naruto looked up to see a boy about the same age as Tenten but with the Byakugan, meaning that he was a part of the Hyuga clan. Well, they're better storage seals made by Naruto here. Tenten explained to the boy. The Hyuga boy took one quick look at the seals before turning to the blonde. I am Neji Hyuga, a member of the Hyuga branch family. The boy introduced himself and Naruto's eyes widened by a fraction, knowing of the birdcage seal that was placed on all branch members. What's this youthful gathering going on over here? Another boy, though dressed in hideous green spandex one piece, interrupted. Oh Lee, this is Naruto and she's helped me with my seals. Tenten admitted. Naruto smiled at the boy and ignored the look of admiration in Lee's eyes. This is great and all, but Tenten, do you mind doing me a favor? Naruto asked, turning to the brunette sitting next to her. Sure, what do you need? The girl asked. Well, you see, the librarians don't really like me and don't let me borrow books. Could you borrow this one and a few others for me? The blonde asked, hoping her new friend would agree. While Neji looked at her with suspicion, Tenten nodded her head and Naruto smiled with relief. After picking out some other books on Funinjutsu, Tenten borrowed the books and gave them to Naruto. I can't thank you enough for borrowing the books for me. The blonde thanked, to which Tenten replied by saying that it was nothing. When Team Guy, as she learnt the team was called, she turned and headed to her apartment in order to learn more advanced seals. By the time night fell, Naruto was well on her way to creating a new seal that could transfer one's life energy to create an infant. However, it can only be used on someone who was mortally wounded or close to death. By mixing the DNA of the user and the recipient, it created an infant that could then be given to someone who wanted a baby. She was at least 85% done with it. The seal could in theory be used in its current state, however, it would require lots of chakra from the user and the seal would appear on the child. Not something a child wants to grow up with, knowing from experience. Heading to bed, she decided that she was done for today and could finish the seal tomorrow before briefing the Hokage on its creation before it'll inevitably be listed as a forbidden jutsu. Before sleep took hold of her, she briefly wondered if it would ever be used in the future by someone. She wondered if this seal had already been created. Could she have had a sibling? A couple weeks had passed since the completion of the seal, and since then, Naruto has formally presented it to the Hokage as well as listed its uses for those who lose their partners during battle. The old man had admitted that the idea was rather unique but accepted into the Forbidden Scroll. The blonde had smirked at the achievement, as it wasn't every day that you made a forbidden jutsu. Apparently Kakashi had managed to remove his furniture from the ceiling, but not without being accused of being insane when he tried to explain the situation to those he attempted to get help from. Finally, it seemed that Guy wanted to see for himself, only to be pleasantly surprised to see his rival wasn't going mad. Currently Team 7 had just captured Tora the cat whom belonged to the feudal lord's wife. Now then, for Squad 7's next mission, we have several available tasks. Among them are babysitting the chief counselor's 3-year-old, helping his wife do the shopping, taking out potatoes. The Hokage stopped as he was interrupted by a frustrated Naruto. No, I want to go on a real mission. Something challenging and exciting, not this little kid stuff. Come on, old man, the blonde complained irritably. Naruto guessed that both Sasuke and Sakura agreed, considering their silence, though Kakashi's sigh was to be expected. I'm a ninja and I want a ninja mission. She pouted, something that only Kakashi and the Hokage could really understand. Since you are so determined, I'm going to give you a C-ranked mission. You'll be bodyguards on a journey. The Hokage explained, an amused smile adorning his wrinkled face. Who is it? When do we go? She asked, almost jumping up and down with excitement. Don't be so impatient, I'll bring him in now. The old man replied before adding, send in our visitor. To the Anbu standing outside the mission hall. Out from the sliding door came a drunken old man, and Naruto already had a bad feeling about this guy. What the? A bunch of little snot-nosed brats? The drunken man growled before taking a swing of his liquor, dribbling a little bit of it down the side of his mouth. And you, the girl with the idiotic look on your face, you really expect me to believe that you're a ninja? The drunken man added coldly. Naruto's eye twitched at being made fun of. I'll end you. Come here and face me. She spat as Kakashi had to use both hands to hold her back. I am Tazuna, a master bridge builder, and I must return to my country. I'm building a bridge there that'll change our world and I expect you to get me there safely even if it means giving up your life." The drunken man explained with a very slight slur and a somewhat cold tone. "Yeah, bridges do tend to change the environment," Naruto sarcastically whispered, allowing only Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke to hear her. "We'll meet at the main gate in an hour," the Junin added before Team 7 left to their respective housing to grab necessities. Naruto packed her Anbu armor and mask into a labeled sealing scroll before putting at the bottom of her bag. Next put her clothes, weapons, toiletries, and other necessities into their respective scrolls and placing them in her bag along with a sleeping bag, notebook pad ink. She arrived a couple minutes early and noticed that Sasuke and Sakura had already arrived. 10 minutes after their supposed departure time, Kakashi showed up with the client and they headed off outside of Konohana. As they headed away from the village, Naruto began to skip in delight. "What are getting so excited about, Naruto?" Sakura half asked, half sneered. "This is my first time out of the village." Naruto stopped before she could spill anything. "Yeah, my first time out of the village since the start of my mission," she thought to herself, dancing for joy on the inside. "Hey, am I supposed to trust my life with this runt? She's a joke," Tazuna asked to Kakashi, who chuckled nervously in return. "It's alright, she's with me and I'm a Junin. So you don't need to worry," Kakashi answered with a slightly cautious tone. All while Naruto's eye began to twitch one more in irritation. "Never insult a ninja, it's a big mistake and I'm one of the greatest ninja ever. Someday I'll become a Hokage and you'll have to look up at me. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Remember it," she ranted, hiding her killing intent so that only Tazuna could feel it. After that, he made no more comments and the group continued walking. "Say, you're from the Land of Waves, right? Don't they have their own ninja?" Sakura asked both Kakashi and Tazuna. "No, there are no ninja in the Land of Waves. But in other countries there are hidden villages, each with their own different customs and cultures, where ninja reside," Kakashi explained simply and with a bored tone. He then went on to explain the nations and the cages, but Naruto already knew it so she didn't bother to listen. "Then Lord Hokage is really important," Sakura screeched, but Naruto guessed that the Haruno doubted the strength of the Hokage. "Hey, you all just doubted Lord Hokage, didn't you? That's what you were thinking," Kakashi accused, and Naruto truthfully shook her head. "Well, anyways, there are no ninja battles in a C-ranked mission. You can relax," Kakashi comforted Sakura with a pat on the head. "Then we're not going to run into any foreign ninja or anything like that." Sakura basically repeated, to which Kakashi said that it wasn't likely. However, Naruto felt that they were being watched and guessed that Kakashi felt it too. As the group continued towards the Land of Wave, Naruto spotted a couple puddles of water and felt some chakra signatures in them. She looked back just in time to see Kakashi look away from the puddles. Their eyes locked for a second, and in that second, they had already formulated a plan of attack. Less than a minute after they passed the puddle, two figures, that Naruto recognized as the Demon Brothers from one of the bingo books she'd seen, emerged and caught an already substituted Kakashi in their long chain and pulling tightly to snap Kakashi in half. Sakura and Naruto screamed while Sasuke looked on in shock. The brothers came up behind her and she quickly backflipped away, cutting her hand on a kunai, before Sasuke used a shuriken and kunai to pin the chain to a nearby tree. Naruto kicked out the shins of the Chunin level missing nin while Sasuke kicked their heads. The chain connecting the two together snapped, and now that the brothers were free, they escaped from Naruto and Sasuke in favor of heading towards Sakura and the client. Either out of fear or determination, Sakura stood in front of Tazuna to protect him. Sasuke and Naruto dashed after the two as fast as they could, but before they caught up, Kakashi was in front of the Chunin-ranked missing nin and had both of them in a painful-looking headlock. "Hi," the Junin greeted with a bored look on his face. "Sorry for not helping sooner and letting you get hurt, I just didn't realize you got hurt till now," Kakashi added, dragging the missing nin to a tree in order to tie them up. "Don't move around too much, Naruto, these guys use poison in their attacks," Kakashi added to the blonde before she was about to walk over to Sakura and Sasuke. "Damn it," Naruto thought as she realized she could feel the burn from the poison moving through her bloodstream. Naruto turned to the interrogation of both the missing nin and the bridge builder, not wanting to spread the poison more by moving around. Sure, the fox would take care of it, but to what extent, she wasn't quite sure. I needed to see if they were after us, ninja after ninja, or you, the master bridge builder. Kakashi explained to the bridge builder. Naruto stiffened ever so slightly when she heard this. Sure, both she and Kakashi had aliases and probably bounties, but surely no one outside of Kakashi, Anbu, and the Hokage knew she was undercover. Otherwise they'd be foolish to think they could take both of them on. Even if they were unaware of her status, sending two Chunin after a Junin was rather idiotic. We should go back, and I really think that we need to treat Naruto's wound and get the poison out as soon as possible. Back in our village, we can take him to a doctor. Sakura worried, causing Naruto to become frustrated. Naruto's hand could become a problem. I guess we should go back to the village. Kakashi mused aloud, further irritating the blonde. Naruto's eyes became dark with killing intent. There was no way she was turning down this mission after redoing her academy life and ultimately becoming soft. Grabbing on of her kunai, and before anyone could stop her, she stabbed her hand to release what was left of the poisoned blood onto the ground. I will never back down, nor will I have anyone rescue me. I will never run away. Bridge builder, with this wound I promise to protect you. A real ninja never gives up, and neither will I. Don't you guys worry about me. If you guys want to back down, then don't even think about trying to use me in doing so. I'll be fine. Now let's go, she growled. Naruto, that was really cool how you took the poison out and all, but if you lose any more blood, you're going to die. Kakashi calmly declared, and Naruto thought about it for a moment before realizing that it was a possibility and shuddered slightly. It'd be a good idea to stop the bleeding now, seriously. Kakashi teased, an amused look on the visible portion of his face. After a small freak out about Kakashi's sadistic streak and Sakura's comment on how the blonde was apparently a masochist, Naruto gave her hand to the white-haired man who seemed to study the cut carefully. Following his gaze, the blonde noticed a little steam and a slight sizzling noise coming from the cut as it began to heal itself. Continuing on after Naruto's hand was wrapped, the group continued on for the rest of the day, picking up pace now that there were more urgent matters to attend to. The moon was already high in the sky by the time the group stopped, though Naruto knew she'd be able to continue well into the night if needed. I'll do first watch, the blonde volunteered. Kakashi nodded in agreement before assigning Sasuke second watch and Sakura third. With a sigh of relief, Naruto watched as everyone retreated into their respective sleeping arrangements. She looked at the fire in front of her and began to think, something she didn't really like to do. Doing so ended up bringing back some bad memories for her, and by not thinking, she generally was happier, though the blonde became brash and unpredictable. By midnight, Naruto had a tear-stained face and red, puffy eyes. I'm such an idiot. I should have woken Sasuke 2 hours ago. She whispered to herself, yet made no effort to move just yet. Another hour passed and the blonde finally felt good enough to wake her teammate. Sasuke. Wake up, Sasuke. Naruto hissed slightly. She felt the chill of a metal kunai against her through but didn't move. Sasuke, don't be an idiot. It's Naruto, she added before the weapon was removed. Only once she was sure that everything was good with the Uchiha did she get up and head to her sleeping bag and went to sleep. When Naruto woke, she was being shaken by Sakura and guessed that the pink-haired girl had just finished her watch. Looking up at the sky, she noticed that it was about 5 in the morning. The blonde rubbed her eyes and blinked a couple more times in order to rid herself of her sleepiness. Finally, taking a good look around the temporary campsite they'd set up, she noticed that both Kakashi and Sasuke were already awake. She huffed slightly at the thought of being woken last but pushed it aside and practically jumped out of her sleeping bag so that she could pack everything up. Only 10 minutes later did the group move out once more, headed to their destination of Wave Country. As the sun rose higher in the sky, a thick fog began to roll from the nearby water and decreased visibility. Tazuna assured the ninjas that this was normal and nothing to be concerned about. Once the group came to the water, they followed the beach for about 100 meters before coming across one of Tazuna's friends who took them out on a small boat to the island. We're coming to the bridge now, the boat driver whispered just before the rather large bridge came into view. From what she could see, it was almost complete. The blonde wondered why Tazuna would only ask for help now in comparison to when he started the bridge. It's huge, Naruto heard Sakura comment before the boat driver hushed them. After the brief explanation, Naruto kept a hand firmly over her mouth to make sure she wouldn't say anything and to make sure she lightened her breathing. "Mr. Tazuna, before we reach the pair, I want to ask you something." Kakashi asked in with an underling aggressive tone. "The men who are after you, I need to know why. If you don't tell us, I'm afraid I'll have to end this mission when we drop you ashore," he added, staring at the bridge builder intensely. The client seemed to hesitate slightly before giving in with a silent sigh. "I have no choice but to tell you. No, I want you to know the truth. Like you said, this is beyond the scope of the original mission. The one who seeks my life is a very short man who casts a very long and deadly shadow." Tazuna explained, though not very clearly. "A deadly shadow?" the Junin inquired, seeming to become rather interested. However, the only thing that came to mind was one very lazy Shikamaru Nara. "Who is it?" Kakashi asked again, narrowing his visible eyes slightly. "You know him, at least I'm sure you've heard his name before. He is one of the wealthiest men in the world. The shipping magnate Gato," Tazuna introduced. Naruto watched as Kakashi's face lit up slightly in recognition of the name. To her it was familiar, but names never really came easily, so she decided to let the conversation play out without her interruption. "Gato? Of Gato Transport? He's a business leader, everyone knows him," Kakashi recited in confusion, and that's when Naruto finally remembered the face that went with the name. "Gato is a very powerful tycoon from a famous company, that's true. But below the surface, with the same ruthless methods he uses to take over businesses and nations, he sells drugs and contraband using gangs and ninja. It was 1 year ago when Gato first set sight on the land of waves. He came to our island and used his vast wealth to take total control over our transport and shipping. Anyone who tried to stand in his way simply disappeared. In an island nation, a man who controls the sea controls everything: finance, government, and our very lives. But there is one thing he fears. The bridge. When it is complete, it will join us to the land and that will break his control. I am the bridge builder," Tazuna explained, hoping his monologue was able to get his point across to the ninja group. "So that's it? Since you're in charge of the bridge, you're standing in this gangster's way?" Sakura analyzed, but Naruto could tell it was mainly a confirmation that the pink-haired girl had gotten the information correct. "That means those guys we fought in the forest, they were working for Gato," Sasuke added. As the blonde thought about it, the more it made sense. The only thing that didn't make sense to her was that Jiraiya's spy network didn't pick up on this. The network usually got all major political changes, so why not this one? Was it because the country wasn't large enough or didn't have a ninja village to be concerned about? It was definitely going to be one of those things that were going to keep her up tonight. "I don't understand. If you knew he was dangerous, knew he'd send ninja to eliminate you, why did you hide that from us?" The Junin asked the client, with an underlying tone that Naruto couldn't quite call other than ticked off. "Because the land of waves is a small impoverished nation. Even our nobles have little money." Kakashi didn't quite look convinced, so Tazuna continued. "The common people who are building this bridge, they can't pay for an A or B ranked mission. It's too expensive. If you end the mission when you drop me ashore, there will be no bridge. They'll assassinate me before I reach home. But don't feel bad about that. Of course my sweet little grandson will be upset. He'll cry, 'Granddad, I want my granddad.' Oh, and my daughter will condemn the ninja from the hidden leaves, denouncing and blaming you for abandoning her father and living her life in sorrow. Oh well, it's not your fault, so forget it." Tazuna attempted to blackmail them into helping, but Naruto just felt the need to punch the guy in the face. "Well, I guess we have no other choice. We'll have to keep guarding you," Kakashi commented, flicking his forehead protector a few times, a small sign of irritation. "I'm very grateful," the client replied, though Naruto thought he didn't sound so grateful. "We're approaching the shore," the boat driver warned before the boat ducked under a smaller bridge. "Tazuna, we've been very fortunate, no one has noticed us so far," the boat driver client responded, though Naruto didn't care much to pay attention, too focused on the land ahead. The mist cleared and the blonde had to squint slightly, not used to the sun, as the fog outside was too thick for much light to pass through. She looked around in slight awe at the sight of the port town they were coming to. It was her first time coming to Wave and doubted it would be her last, so she needed to take in everything she saw for reference. Upon arriving at a pier, the group thanked the boat driver and proceeded to head to the home of Tazuna and his family. Along the way, Naruto felt a spike in chakra leading her to believe another attack was inbound. Using her chakra to pinpoint the location of the enemy, the blonde smirked and proceeded to throw a kunai towards the flare of chakra. Naruto huffed quietly in frustration as she realized a substitution jutsu was used. A whack to the back of the blonde's head, courtesy of the pinkette, resulted in Naruto holding her head and glaring at Sakura. "What was that for? Someone is following us." The blonde growled. "Yeah right. Quit lying and acting like a dumb kid," Sakura retorted. Naruto noticed Kakashi looking through the bushes and guessed that he'd felt the flare too. The pink-haired girl coming up behind the Junin proceeded to complain more due to the rabbit that the blonde almost killed. Picking up the rabbit, Naruto realized that the fur was the wrong color for the season, meaning that it was domesticated. She felt the chakra's signature reappear and subtly nodded to Kakashi in the direction of the enemy. Little warning was given before a massive blade was hurled in their direction. Thanks to Kakashi's warning, everyone was able to duck in time. The sword dug itself into the trunk of a tree and appearing atop the hilt was none other than Zabuza Momochi. Looking up at Zabuza, Naruto realized that the man was shirtless yet decided to wear arm warmers. What is it with bad guys and weird fashion statements? She asked herself in confusion. Well, if it isn't Zabuza Momochi, Rouge Ninja from the village hidden in the mist. Kakashi's voice broke Naruto out of her thoughts as she turned to watch the two. The blonde readied herself to charge before the Junin stopped her. "You need to remember your position," Kakashi whispered so only she could hear. "If he's our opponent, well then I guess I'll need this." The silver-haired man added before reaching for his headband, ready to pull it up if needed. "Kakashi of the Sharingan Eye. Did I get it right?" Zabuza taunted slightly, not yet facing the group. Naruto felt Sasuke stiffen before remembering that he was an Uchiha yet Kakashi was not. "It's too bad, but you'll have to hand over the old man." Their opponent added, "Now quick, diamond formation and protect the bridge builder. Stay out of this fight. I taught you teamwork, now use it," Kakashi ordered before lifting his headband to reveal a closed, scarred eye. Opening it, Naruto spotted the fully matured Sharingan and hitched a breath. It had been years since she last saw it and it looked as powerful as ever. "Well, it looks like I get to see the Sharingan in action. This is an honor." Zabuza smirked as he finally faced them. "Everyone keeps saying Sharingan, can someone please tell me what it is?" Sakura finally asked, looking at Kakashi. Naruto ignored Sasuke's basic breakdown of the bloodline, all focus directed at the missing nin. "You got it right boy. But you only scratched the surface. The Sharingan can analyze an opponent's technique and then copy it to the small detail," Zabuza added, and the blonde narrowed her eyes slightly as a thick, charcoal-laced fog came over them. "As for you Junin, in the assassination unit of the Hidden Mist, we had a standing order to destroy you on sight. Your profile was in our bingo book, they called you the man who copied over 1,000 jutsu. Kakashi, the copy ninja. Though you seem to be missing your key partner. I wonder what happened to her." Zabuza explained, and Naruto could just hear that the missing nin was giddy at the thought of facing Kakashi and that the copy ninja's partner may be dead. The blonde inwardly smirked knowing that this idiot they were facing had no clue that she was said partner. "I need to exterminate the old man. Now," the missing nin declared, crouching down and preparing to strike. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura got into their defense position to protect their client while Kakashi stood a couple meters in front. "So I'll have to eliminate you first, eh Kakashi? So be it," the missing nin snarled before disappearing with the giant knife he called a sword. Feeling a surge in Zabuza's chakra, Naruto turned to the water before pointing it out. "Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu," the missing nin called before the mist thickened and Zabuza vanished seemingly into thin air. "Damn it. For all the times to lose visibility, we're facing a maniac we have to protect someone from." Naruto cursed herself. "He vanished," Sakura whispered. "He'll come after me first," Kakashi assured the pink-haired girl as the man looked around, yet Naruto could tell that he wasn't so sure himself. "But who is he?" Sakura asked, louder this time. "Zabuza Momochi, the ex-leader of the Hidden Mist assassination unit. He's a master of the silent killing technique. As the name suggests, it happens in an instant without any sound or warning of any kind. It's so fast that you pass from this life without realizing what has happened." The Sharingan cannot fully neutralize it, so don't lower your guard. The Junin explained with a hidden message for the blonde. Well, if we fail, we only lose our lives. Kakashi added, attempting to send the message across to the teens. How can you say that? Scolded Sakura, but she seemed to get the picture after the mist around them thickened once more. The land of waves is surrounded by oceans, meaning the mist is ever present. Tazuna warned. 8 points. A voice sounded behind the defense of the teens. What was that? Sakura gasped, eyes widened. The larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, veins, collarbone, kidney, and heart. Now which will be my point of attack? The same voice responded. At that point, Naruto realized that it was Zabuza who was speaking, yet in a more distorted tone, like the mist was changing its user's voice. Kakashi then used his chakra to blow some of the mist away. Killing intent seemed to fill the air, making it dense and hard to breathe for those who were unused to it. Turning to Sasuke, the blonde noticed that the Uchiha was about to stab himself. Just as she was about to speak, Kakashi seemed to have the same thought. Sasuke, calm down. I'll protect you with my life. All of you, Kakashi declared. I will not allow my teammates to die. Trust me. The Junin added, and Naruto couldn't help but smile at the fact Kakashi had said teammates instead of something like students or comrades. The blonde noticed that Sasuke and Sakura both seemed to calm down, yet Naruto stayed tense, ready to strike. I wouldn't be so sure. That was when Zabuza struck. Appearing in between the defense and in front of the client. It's over. The missing nin added, already swinging his cleaver towards the teens. Naruto managed to push the other teens back as Kakashi teleported over, stabbing Zabuza with a kunai. Rather than blood dripping from the wound like it was supposed to, water began to pour from the hole, and Naruto's eyes widened as she realized it was merely a water clone. The real one appeared behind the Junin. Behind you, the blonde warned just as the clone dispersed. The real blade then managed to cut Kakashi in half, and Naruto's mouth opened in shock, yet she couldn't manage a scream. Mere seconds later, and it turned out that Kakashi too was a water clone, and the blonde gave a sigh of relief as the water fell to the ground. The real Kakashi then appeared behind the real Zabuza, a kunai to the neck of the sword wielder. Don't move, now it's over, Kakashi warned, visible eye narrowed. Silent seconds passed before the missing nin gave a snicker. Finished? You really don't get it, do you? Your technique is nothing but a crass imitation. I'll never be defeated by a mere copycat ninja like you. Zabuza taunted, seemingly amused by the trapped situation he was in. The blonde noted that Kakashi growled in response, yet was unsure as to why. The Junin was a famous ninja and even had a nickname. You are full of surprises though. You'd already copied my water clone jutsu when you made your little speech. Very skillfully executed. You made your clone say those words to draw my attention, while you hid in the mist, waiting for me to make my move. Zabuza admitted before seemingly smirking behind his mask. Sorry, but I'm not that easy to fool. He added, appearing behind Kakashi. Kakashi stabbed the man in front of him, only for it to turn to water. The missing nin swung his sword as the Junin turned, only for the copy ninja to duck in response. However, Zabuza managed to kick Kakashi through the air and landed in the water. The missing nin ran after Kakashi, and Naruto felt something inside of her tighten in fear. Only once the silver-haired man emerged did Naruto release the breath she didn't know she was holding. It was then Zabuza came up behind the Junin and created some hand signs. Did Naruto's eyes narrow once more? Fool! Water prison jutsu! Zabuza called out, and Naruto felt her fingers close into a fist. She watched a spherical prison rise from the water as Kakashi was frozen in place. Another water clone rose from the water, and Naruto's eyes widened. You think that wearing a headband makes you a ninja? When you've hovered between life and death so many times it doesn't faze you, you may be called a ninja. When you've become so deadly your profile is entered in my bingo book, then you may have earned the title of ninja. But to call upstarts like you ninja is a joke. Zabuza monologue as the clone disappeared in the mist. A foot from the clone connected roughly with Naruto's chest before she was sent flying away, her headband coming off in the process. The missing nin stepped on the Konohana headband and glared at the teens. You're just brats, the clone snarled. The blonde heard her teammates called to her, yet what caught her attention the most was Kakashi telling her to take the client and run with Sasuke and Sakura. Naruto watched as Sasuke was thinking before the boy charged at the clone, throwing shuriken that were deflected with the sword before the Uchiha jumped up, confusing the missing nin for a second. Ultimately the boy was caught and thrown towards the tree line. The clone stood before her as if he was waiting for her to get up. "Big mistake on your part, pal, but first," she thought, looking briefly at her headband. Naruto charged towards the clone, ignoring the protest behind her as she grabbed her headband before being kicked away. Once again the blonde ignored Sakura as she got up, revealing her headband with a smirk. "Hey you, the freak with no eyebrows. Why don't you add this to your bingo book? The one who'll become the Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves never backs down," she threatened, giving a devilish glare that only Kakashi and Zabuza could see clearly. "Alright Sasuke, listen up. Can you hear me?" she asked, not looking at her teammate. "Yeah, I hear you," the boy replied, and her smirk grew slightly. "I've got a plan," she added. She felt the Uchiha looking at her with interest as he responded. "So you're finally thinking about teamwork. Alright guys, let's go wild," she affirmed, whispering her plan to Sasuke, covering her mouth as she did so that no one could lip read. "Okay, ready? Let's bring this guy down," she finished. "Think that your little plan is going to keep you in the game?" Zabuza asked. "What are you doing? I told you to run. This fight was over the moment I got caught. Now take off. Your mission is not to prove how brave you are, it's to save the bridge builder." "Stay on mission," Kakashi exclaimed, anger quite obvious in his tone. "Bridge builder?" Naruto asked as she turned to face the man in question. Well, I guess this all happened because of me. Because of my desire to live, but I won't let that stand in your way now. Forget about me and do what you have to do," Tazuna replied, looking rather determined and sober for once. "Alright, you hear that?" Sasuke asked with an unusual smirk lining his features. "You ready?" Naruto replied, calming down a little as she knew she was going to save Kakashi. The clone chuckled with a hidden smirk, the only telltale signs being the crinkles in the mask. "You really haven't learned anything, have you? Still playing your game, pretending to be ninja. When I was your age, this hand had already crushed many opponents," the clone announced, leading to Kakashi revealing the missing nin's name in Konohana's own bingo book. "Zabuza the demon. So I was in your book too." Zabuza gloated slightly. Zabuza and Kakashi then began to explain the genin exams that took place back then. Though the blonde had heard the story of Zabuza, she had never figured out why the village had been dubbed the Bloody Mist. Well, that was until now. It felt so good. Zabuza finished, pausing to add emphasis to his words before charging and elbowing Sasuke in the stomach twice at speeds that Naruto's eyes could only just keep up with. After stepping on the fallen Sasuke, Naruto's eyes narrowed in anger and she summoned several shadow clones in order to help her attack the missing nin. She disguised a few clones as weapons as the rest charged and surrounded Zabuza, each with a kunai in hand. The missing nin swung his sword and dispelled the clones that had charged. Reaching into her backpack, she reached in and pulled out a windmill shuriken and tossed it to Sasuke, who then seemed to get where she was going with her plan. After calling out the Shadow Shuriken attack name, the Uchiha then leapt high into the air and tossed the shuriken, which was aimed at the original rather than the clone, much to the clone Zabuza's dread. The original managed to catch the shuriken, but only noticed the Shadow Shuriken when it was too late to catch. Instead, the man jumped in order to dodge. "I told you that shuriken couldn't touch me." Zabuza taunted, only for the shuriken to return back to its original state as the real Naruto that happened to have a kunai. Throwing the kunai at the hand holding Kakashi in place, Zabuza had no choice but to remove his hand and free the Junin. In retaliation, the missing nin attempted to throw the shuriken he'd originally claimed from Sasuke against her. Instead, Kakashi stopped the spinning with a metal guard on his gloves, a killer look in his glare directed at Zabuza. Naruto smiled as the Junin was released, yet faltered ever so slightly at the thought of being rescued once more by the copy ninja. "Naruto, that was an excellent plan. You've really grown, haven't you?" Kakashi complimented, and she smiled in return. "I used the shadow clones as a distraction while I turned into the Shadow Shuriken. When I threw it to Sasuke, it looked like a real shuriken. Sasuke could tell it was me in a second and turned around to pull out his own shuriken. Now there were two shuriken, one was real and the other one was me. I hid in the shadow of the real shuriken while being aimed at the real Zabuza. I knew I couldn't beat him on my own. I just wanted to get in there and break up the water prison. The blonde admitted, stressing the areas of when Sasuke helped and where she was helping Kakashi. I just got distracted and lost my grip on the water prison. Zabuza disclosed. Don't flatter yourself. You weren't distracted, you were forced to let go. Kakashi counted, to which the missing nin grunted in response. Your technique worked on me once, but it won't work on me again. So what's it going to be? The Junin continued. Once Zabuza folded the blades, Naruto could see that Kakashi was struggling against the pressure even with the aid of the metal guard plates. But as she was about to help once more, Kakashi managed to flick the shuriken far out of the way. Both fighters took a leap back as the blonde stayed floating in the water. Sure, she could stand on it, yet that would draw too much attention to herself, even with the distracting fight going on. Both parties began making a series of long and seals, mumbling them out as they did. From the look of the seals, it would be powerful, and due to the area the missing nin was from, she guessed it was a water-based jutsu. Quickly analyzing the scene in front of her, she realized that Zabuza was in a genjutsu from the Sharingan to make it seem that Kakashi was seeing into the future. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. They both announced at the end of the seals before two massive dragons made of water began twirling around each other before finally smashing into each other, causing waves that threatened to wash Naruto further out while Tazuna, Sasuke, and Sakura further inland. As the two dragons fought down on the water's surface, Naruto was able to see Kakashi holding back Zabuza's sword with a kunai knife, yet from her position swimming in the wave water, she noted that both of them were using two hands and neither were letting up. Naruto stiffened as she felt another chakra presence and looked to the trees to spot a hunter nin, and from the reserves, the blonde guessed that the nin was at least chunin ranked, not quite qualified to be a hunter nin. Naruto took her eyes off the suspicious nin when she heard Kakashi call out another jutsu name and watched as a spiral of water crashed into the missing nin, who still seemed to be out of it since the water dragon jutsu. The vortex jutsu ended up washing her about till it took her to the shore, where she was able to grab onto a branch on a small tree so she wasn't washed away once more. The blonde couldn't see where the missing nin had ended up but was sure that Kakashi was nearby. By the time that she had gotten to the rest of the group, the hunter nin she'd seen earlier had finally made a move and used a senbon to the back of Zabuza's neck to kill him. The blonde watched as Kakashi went and checked the pulse of the missing nin in order to confirm the death. Thank you. I've been tracking Zabuza for a long time, waiting for this chance to finally take him down. The hunter nin spoke, bowing his head slightly. By your mask I see that you're a tracker ninja from the village hidden in the mist. Kakashi carefully answered. Impressive. You're well informed. The foreign nin replied neutrally. The blonde narrowed her eyes at the boy and wondered if the hunter nin was a prodigy just like she, Kakashi, and Itachi were. Your struggle is over now. I must deal with the remains. The hunter nin informed the group after teleporting from the tree branch he stood on so that he was next to the body. Naruto's eyes narrowed as she watched the boy take the supposed remains before teleporting off with a gust of wind, much to the annoyance of the blonde. With that, Kakashi lowered his headband over his right eye once more. We haven't completed our mission yet. We still have to get the bridge builder to his bridge. The copy ninja stated before Tazuna laughed. Sorry I caused all this trouble for you, but you can rest at my house once we get to the village. The client added with a chuckle. Alright, let's move on. Kakashi announced before turning to head towards Tazuna's village. After a couple steps, Kakashi stopped as his legs and body began to shake, eyes widened before promptly falling face first to the ground. Naruto quickly ran to the Junin, trying to figure out what could have happened. As it turns out, overusing the Sharingan tends to deplete chakra 3 times faster in comparison to when not in use. With a sigh, Naruto managed to heave Kakashi onto her shoulders while his feet dragged on the ground, considering that Sakura wasn't strong enough and Sasuke couldn't care less while she didn't trust the drunk to help her. After about 30 minutes of walking, the group arrived at Tazuna's house and Naruto excused herself to go and lay Kakashi down in a room. Upon returning to the dining room of the client's house, she noticed what seemed to be Tazuna's daughter severing some afternoon tea. Greetings, you must be the other ninja my father was talking about. My name is Tsunami, the daughter introduced. Naruto Uzumaki, the blonde replied with a smile. She seated herself opposite Sakura, who next to Sasuke, and guessed the pink-haired girl was trying to grab the attention of her longtime crush, the heir to the Uchiha clan. The rest of the day was uneventful, with Kakashi not waking up and the trio of teens heading to bed early. It was around 10 in the morning on the next day. Kakashi awoke. When the blonde next entered Kakashi's room, she spotted the client's daughter talking to the Junin and called for Sasuke and Sakura to tell them that the copy ninja was finally awake. She ignored the casual conversation going on between the others as her mind was recalling the events that finished the battle. The more she thought about it, the more suspicious she felt of the hunter Nin. Usually the body was destroyed on sight, with only the head being sealed into a scroll as evidence. Here's the truth. Zabuza's still alive. Kakashi finished, pulling Naruto from her thoughts. But you checked him yourself. You said that his heart stopped. Sakura gasped. His heart did stop, but that was a temporary state to simulate death. The Junin replied before explaining Senbon, the weapons used, as well as more detail about Hunter Nin training, then onto the mysterious Nin that saved Zabuza. The blonde grinned, knowing that she would be able to face the opposing ninjas again. You say that we have to prepare quickly, but how are we supposed to do that when you can barely move? Sakura asked, and Naruto had the urge to face palm, though with great strength, she resisted. When the blonde looked over at Sasuke, she could tell the boy was having similar thoughts. Kakashi's chuckle brought the blonde's attention back to the copy ninja, though she could already guess what he was going to say. Naruto, you've grown the most. Kakashi finished, drawing her out for her thoughts. Realizing the compliment the Junin gave her, she smirked before playing along with his little game. So you've noticed? Now things are going to get better. The blonde replied, hints of sarcasm here and there. I don't believe it, and nothing's going to be good. A whiny voice sounded from behind them. Turning in confusion, Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto spotted what appeared to be a 7 or 8-year-old boy with dark hair and eye, who was dressed in a pale yellow shirt, green overalls, and a white hat with 2 blue stripes that seemed a little too big for the boy. Inari, where have you been? Tazuna asked with enthusiasm. I'm back, Grandpa. Inari replied, sounding happier as the boy ran and hugged his kneeling grandfather. Inari, that was very rude. These ninja helped your grandpa and brought him here safely. Tsunami scolded, hands on her hips as she looked at her son sternly. It's okay, it's okay. I'm rude to them too. The client added as Naruto swallowed a growl. Mum, don't you see these people are going to die? Gato and his men will come back and find them and wipe them out. The young boy complained. At least he just seems worried rather than plain rude. Naruto sighed to herself before getting up and preparing a lecture of her own. Listen up, brat. Do you know what a ninja is? Well, that's us as well as several others. This Gato is no match for real ninjas like us. In this case, you could call us similar to heroes if you wanted. Naruto lectured, which caused Inari to lower his head. There is no such thing as a hero. You're just full of stupid ideals. If you want to stay alive, you best go back to where you came from. The young boy muttered darkly. At this point, Naruto was having a hard time controlling her anger, and Sakura tried to keep her from going after the brat. After Sakura let her go, she stalked over to where Inari was holed up in his room. As she made it to the hallway, Naruto could faintly hear sobbing, which only became louder as she approached the brat's room. Peeking inside, she spotted the young boy sitting on his windowsill holding some sort of picture, crying and mumbling about a father. With a sigh, she decided it would be best to talk later when the boy was slightly more rational. Later that day, the team found themselves in a wooded area not too far from the client's house, but not so close as to cause a disturbance. When Kakashi started to explain chakra to the group, Naruto realized that they were doing the tree climbing exercise. We learned about Katra back at the academy. She complained, purposely pronouncing it wrong to annoy the Junin for making her go through this again. With a sigh, the copy ninja turned to Sakura to make that the pink-haired student knew about chakra. Wait a minute, that's a nice trick, but how is it going to help us fight Zabuza? Sakura asked, suspicion lacing her voice as she spoke. It's the only way to fight his Sakura. It's the entire goal of this training. Kakashi started. First you must learn to draw a precise amount of chakra to a precise point of your body. This is difficult, even for advanced ninja. The Junin explained from his perch underneath a branch. This type of climbing requires a subtle mix of both physical and spiritual energy, and the bottoms of the feet are the most difficult to focus chakra. Are you getting the picture? If you can master this, then you can master any jutsu. Well, theoretically, the man added, taking a small breather. The second point is to learn to maintain your chakra levels. When a ninja is focused in battle, it becomes even harder to control and maintain chakra levels, a deadly mistake. To avoid this, maintaining chakra must become second nature. Effortless. Kakashi ended his explanation. The man threw 2 kunai, one at the feet of the Uchiha and the other at the feet of the Haruno. Naruto tilted her head as she looked at Kakashi, wondering what he was playing at. Sakura and Sasuke, you two start your training. Naruto and I will watch the bridge and do more basic chakra control exercises. Kakashi added before Sasuke gave a smug smirk to the blonde girl. Naruto crossed her arms and looked away in annoyance but followed Kakashi as he left. When the pair arrived at the bridge, Naruto noticed that Kakashi seemed to be dragging his feet more, as if the Junin was attempting to hide his fatigue from her. Go back and watch the others, I can look after the bridge builder myself. The blonde spoke, looking up at the copy ninja. She proceeded to stare till the man gave up. Fine, but if it seems that Zabuza is back, I want you to find me. We can't have you breaking cover so soon. Kakashi warned and Naruto gave a stiff and knowing nod. She met the bridge builder, as he seemed to be having an argument with one of the workers. She didn't care to listen in and instead waited till the man was done before following him around. Where's Pinky and Emo? Tazuna asked finally. Training, climbing trees. She responded casually. Too tough for you? The client asked and Naruto felt her left eye beginning to twitch. No, I just mastered it years beforehand. She growled in response, much to the surprise of the client. As the sun began to set over the ocean, Tazuna said that he needed to get groceries and the blonde accompanied him. Naruto looked around and at once noticed all the people who seemed to be homeless, looking for work, and malnourished. It only seemed to get worse once the two made their way into the grocery store. She looked at the lack of food and began to wonder if this was Gato's doing. If so, then she was not going to spare him for hurting all of these people. As Tazuna paid for the few vegetables, apparently one of the citizens thought it would be a good idea to grope her, that or try to steal from her. The split second after the man touched her, she span round and got behind the man with speed that even mid-ranked Chunin had trouble spotting and placed a kunai at her attacker's exposed neck. If I had to say some traits that I dislike, they would be perverts that don't know how to keep it in their pants and grown men who think it's alright to steal from young girls, even if they happen to be ninja. Naruto growled in the man's ear, her kunai leaving a thin red line on the man's neck. Said attacker then burst from the store yowling about crazy ninja girls. On their way home, another person gabbed onto her. From the size of the hand, Naruto knew this person was a child and decided not to attack. Upon turning around, she saw a small and hungry child smile up at her and asking for food. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a scroll and activated it. Out of the scroll popped out some sweets and bread. With a sorrow-filled smile, she handed the food to the child and watched as the same child began to share the food with some other kids. This is how it's been since Gato came here. The children suffer and the adults are too scared to stand up to him. They've lost all hope and that is why we have to finish the bridge. Tazuna explained, sounding much older than he usually did. The blonde gave a reassuring smile and nodded in understanding. When they arrived back to the client's house, Tsunami began cooking dinner and shortly after the rest of the team arrived. Dinner was a simple vegetable and fish soup with bread on the side. As Naruto began to devise a plan to take revenge against Gato, she didn't realize she had eaten so quickly. What had surprised her more was when Sasuke had eaten at the same pace and asked for more at the same time she did before promptly throwing up. Once dinner was finished, Tsunami served tea to everyone before beginning the washing up. Excuse me, but this picture is torn, is there some reason for that? Sakura asked, pulling Naruto's attention to the torn photograph. The family seemed to stiffen at the questions and Inari's lowered his head so his eyes were covered with the shadow of his hat. It's my husband, Tsunami replied, breaking the silence. They used to call him a hero in this land. Tazuna added, grief lacing his words. At the statement Inari stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him before Tsunami scolded her father for speaking about Kaiza and chasing after her son. It was after that Team 7 learned about Inari, Kaiza, and Gato. The blonde clenched her hands in disgust at the way Gato flaunted his money and power by threatening an entire country. But she grinned to herself knowing that it wouldn't be for much longer. Getting up from her chair, Naruto headed to the door, only to be interrupted by Kakashi. "Where do you think you're going?" the Junin asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. The blonde smirked before replying. "I'm going to prove that heroes really do exist," she responded before exiting his house into the chilly night outside. She trusted Kakashi to keep Sasuke and Sakura at the house so that she could train in peace. Once she found an appropriately sized clearing, she grabbed a seal containing the small sword that Itachi had given her and activated it, releasing the sword. After a deep breath, she began moving in powerful yet fluid movements, swinging the sword around as if to pierce invisible enemies. She jumped and flipped through the air with practiced ease and landing softly with minimal sound. By the end of her round, she found that her eyes had closed somewhere during her dance-like movements. Resealing the sword, she began other exercises to work on her taijutsu. By the time the sun was rising, Naruto was exhausted and collapsed onto the ground breathing heavily. A strangely familiar chakra signature alerted her to someone's approach. It was slow as if this person was stopping every so often. But surely enough, the person came closer till they stood over her. Naruto was pretending to be asleep and guessed she was pretty convincing as the person had kneeled next to her. The strangest thing had to be that at first it seemed like this person was going to kill her by strangling her, yet at the last minute changed their mind as they went to wake the blonde up. "You'll catch a cold if you sleep here. Wake up," a feminine voice warned gently. Naruto looked up and saw an equally as feminine person looking over her, yet she knew that looks could be deceiving as there were several aspects to the person that made Naruto believe this was a boy. "Thanks, but what are you doing out here?" Naruto asked in confusion. "I'm gathering herbs for treating illnesses and wounds," the girly-looking boy replied. "Would you like some help?" the blonde asked with a small smile. The boy nodded and smiled back in response. Soon the pair were looking through the grass to find the right herbs. "You sure like to be up early," Naruto commented as she pulled a leafy stem from the ground. "I like it early. It's calm and I didn't think I'd find anyone sleeping here in the woods," the boy replied with hints of amusement. The blonde gave a nervous laugh, glad she hadn't done anything too destructive. "I'm training," Naruto put in to add a little context for the boy. "So are you a ninja? I noticed the headband you're wearing. Or are you just making a fashion statement?" the boy added. "Well, only ninja with a village are supposed to wear these," she responded with a small smile. "Does that mean you're training for something dangerous?" the boy inquired. "Not really, I just want to get stronger." Naruto hummed slightly. "But you seem very strong now, isn't that enough?" the boy asked. "Not really, I have to keep getting stronger," the blonde admitted, turning more of her attention to the boy. "Why is it so important?" the boy inquired. Though the boy's voice didn't portray much interest, the way he was leaning in told a different story. "Well, it's difficult to explain really. I want to be able to support those who are precious to me, and by helping my village, I can do that," Naruto replied with a slight hesitance. "Is there a specific special person to you?" the boy asked. "I haven't really thought about that. But there are several people I wish to protect, not just one." "What about you?" the blonde added after a moment of thought. At that, the boy seemed to get quiet and the blonde guessed it was bringing back some bad memories. When he snapped out of it, he gave a small smile to Naruto before standing up and grabbing his basket of herbs. "You will get strong, I know it. We'll meet again sometime," he said before heading back to where he came from before pausing. "Oh, by the way, I'm a boy," the boy added. "And I'm a girl," Naruto called back. Though she couldn't see it, she could tell the boy was smiling. It was then that Sasuke came over and tried to hit her over the head. She dodged by a hair's width before the boy spoke. "Hey twerp, did you just forget about breakfast? Such a loser." The Uchiha grumbled over her unintelligent mumbling about duck butts and pink banshees. She snickered, causing Sasuke to glare at her. "I have an idea. Want to scare Sakura?" she asked, an evil glint ever so present in her eyes. Though he didn't give a verbal response, the slight smirk he gave off was all the confirmation she needed. As she found, if you hang around one Uchiha long enough, you can read any Uchiha. Looking up at one of the larger trees, she began to walk upwards to the astonishment of the young Uchiha. "Since when could you climb trees?" Kakashi said that you had to work at the more basic levels. Sasuke asked in suspicion. Last night. What else do you think I was doing? She lied as she came to a high enough branch before lying down atop it. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to pretend to fall of this branch only to save myself by sticking to bottom of this branch. Then I'm going to pretend to fall again, only for you to catch me. Am I clear? She instructed only to get an HN in response. The blonde rolled her eyes as she watched Sasuke climb the tree next to hers to hide in the shelter of the leaves. It was about 20 minutes later that both Sakura and Kakashi showed up. Naruto knew that if it had taken any longer, Sasuke would have probably gone insane as the leaves covering him shifted every few minutes. Knowing Naruto, she could be anywhere. And Sasuke hasn't come back either. I wonder where they are. Sakura thought aloud. The blonde smirked as she threw a kunai directly at the feet of the two on the ground. Why is Naruto up so high? She couldn't have used chakra to get there. Sakura murmured, but Naruto's sensitive hearing caught every word. Is this high enough for you? I mean, it is a long way down. Naruto chuckled before standing up on the branch, a smirk clear on her face. With that, the blonde slid a foot forward and became unbalanced in turn, falling of the top of the branch. As Sakura screamed, the blonde activated the chakra at her feet to stick to the bottom of the branch. Just kidding, you really fell for it. Naruto laughed. We were worried about you, Naruto. Sakura barked. A quick glance at Sasuke's hiding spot was the signal, and she deactivated the chakra so she began to fall. Maybe this wasn't my smartest idea. Naruto thought to herself as she wondered if Sasuke would indeed catch her. Though her thought was proven wrong, as the Uchiha did catch her whilst he stuck to the bottom of the branch she was once laying on. The looks of Sakura and Kakashi's faces were worth making herself seem like an idiot though. The rest of the day was mostly uneventful, with Sasuke being the only one able to make it to the top of the tallest tree. In a few more days, the bridge will be finished. I have you to thank for that. Tazuna started once dinner had been finished. You've all done great, but you still need to be careful. Tsunami warned as she cleared the dishes. I've been meaning to ask you things, but I haven't had the chance to, until now. Why did you stay and protect me, even after you found out that I lied to bring you here? The client asked, slightly weary. Those who stray from the path of justice have no courage. But under the wing of a strong leader, cowardice cannot survive. Kakashi answered, eyes closed and almost looking as if he were praying. That was a quote from the first Hokage. The Junin explained when the client and his daughter looked confused. Naruto was barely aware of a gaze that had settled on her half-meditative state. Though she heard and was aware, she was still resting, something that was almost mandatory in the Anbu considering the back-to-back and long-term missions. The sound of a droplet hitting the table stirred the blonde from her state and given to curiosity when Inari asked why. All of this stupid training is just a waste of time. Gato's got a whole army, they'll beat you down and they'll destroy you. These cool things you all say, they don't mean anything. No matter what you do, the strong always win and the weak always lose. The little boy ranted when Naruto gave a questioning look. Just speak for yourself. It won't be like that for me. You got that? The blonde scoffed, turning away so she could attempt to regain her calm state of mind. Why don't you just be quiet? Just looking at you makes me sick. You don't know anything about this country, you're just butting in. Always laughing and playing around. You don't know what it's like to suffer and be treated like dirt. Exclaimed Inari. At this, Naruto visibly stiffened and she felt the air tense as Kakashi held his breath, waiting for an outburst, while Sasuke and Sakura's eyes widened slightly at the tension filling the air. With a deep breath, Naruto managed to stop herself from getting physical with the kid. Listen to yourself whining and complaining like some sorry little victim. You can whimper all day for all I care. You're nothing but a coward. The blonde snarled, a slight killing intent lacing the air in the room, adding to the already prominent thickness of the situation. Naruto, you went too far. Sakura attempted to scold, but with a slam of the table hard enough to leave a small imprint, Naruto ground her teeth as she stopped off and out of the house. She knew that the others would be startled by her outburst, but for someone to accuse her of not suffering went over the line, and she'd rather die than pretend it didn't hurt. Storming off into the woods, she went to practice her kenjutsu to calm herself down. The wind brought her the way Kakashi explained her situation, covering up and leaving out the important and secret information to Inari. Though it calmed her slightly knowing that her story would probably cause the boy to think about his actions and words, It did completely diminish her anger. Though she'd stayed up the previous night and all day, she didn't feel like returning home anytime soon. She'd completed her sword training and was now lying on the ground, looking at the visible stars through the thin canopy overhead. The scuffling of feet alerted her to someone else's presence, and she turned her head slightly to see an unimpressed, yet curious, Sasuke. "What was that about, you loser?" the Uchiha asked, hands deep in his pockets. "None of your business," Naruto replied, returning her gaze to the dark sky. After some more shuffling, she felt Sasuke sit next to her, occasionally staring. "What do you want?" Naruto asked in a sigh after some moments of silence passed between the two. "I want to know what you're hiding," Sasuke sternly replied, fixing his gaze on the relaxed blonde who stiffened ever so slightly, showing guilt to the boy. "I have no idea what you're talking about." The blonde avoided, looking away. "Don't play dumb. I've seen the way that the Hokage and Kakashi have looked at you like you're something special. I've also heard the mutterings that you've said when you thought no one could hear you. We already know that you are a girl, yet you hid that in the academy." "Naruto Uzumaki, just who are you? Is that even your real name?" Sasuke demanded. Naruto bit her lip because of the nerves rising. "Shit, the old man never gave me an excuse to use." The blonde thought in despair. "I can't tell you as I don't know everything myself." She sighed, giving in and looking at the boy. The Uchiha just gave her a confused glance before sighing lightly. "Well, whatever. This isn't over, but you should get some rest," Sasuke muttered before getting up and stalking his way to the client's house. It wasn't until an hour later that Naruto followed and headed into the house in which they were staying at. Surprisingly, the door was locked and the blonde guessed that it was Sasuke's way of being defiant. Unsealing her lock-picking kit from the anbu, she opened the door and with much stealth, closed and locked the front door before making it to the room she and Sakura were staying in. Almost as soon as her head hit the pillow, she fell into an uneasy sleep. By the time she woke up, the sun was in her eyes and she became confused as she rubbed her eyes. After her eyes became adjusted to the new light, Naruto looked out the window only to realize it was rather lat. "That asshole left me here," she growled after sensing that Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke's chakra signature was nowhere in the house. Turning to her scrolls, she unsealed a dark teal battle kimono with a brown sash, a pair of leggings, and her metal-plated gloves. After pulling her cloths on, she unsealed one of her bingo books to find information on Zabuza and his apparent apprentice. Naruto then ran out of the house with a farewell to Tsunami and Inari before going through the bingo book as she ran through the trees. The sight of red caught her eye and the blonde scurried over to find a dead boar covered in the slashes of a sword. Sealing the book away, Naruto followed the slashed trees all the way back to the client's house. "I hope I'm not too late," the blonde thought as she picked up speed. In front of the house, she paused, sensing two unfamiliar signatures. From her hiding place, she noted that two men were dragging Tsunami, whom had her hands tied behind her back. "I just need some sort of distraction," she analyzed to herself. As if by some sort of fate, Inari came charging at the two sword users. In a blur, Naruto found herself next to an unconscious Tsunami and grabbed her before moving to a safer location. From there, she used the replacement jutsu just as Inari was about to get sliced. "Sorry I'm a little late." Naruto smirked as she laid Tsunami on the ground as gentle as possible as Inari was hung over her shoulder. "But you know, heroes usually show up at the last minute," she added smugly before placing the little boy down. "Inari, you did great. When you charged, they forgot about your mum for a minute. That gave me the chance to use a cool jutsu and get your mum away from them," Naruto praised. Inari looked up, slightly confused before asking, "But Naruto, how did you know they were going to attack?" "Well, in the forest I found a boar that had been attacked and the trees were cut up like someone had been practicing with a sword or something. And with all the marks leading towards the house, I followed them," the blonde explained with a small smile, glad that Inari had seemingly become more interested. "It's one of those puny ninja brats that Tazuna hired." The shirtless swordsman snickered before the one with the hat gave the order to attack. The two attackers charged and Naruto threw two of her clones disguised as shuriken with ease. The swordsman deflected the throwing stars with little difficulty and began taunting the blonde. Naruto smirked as her clones came out of their shuriken forms and kicked the toe attackers in the head and effectively knocking them out. You actually did it. You're like a real ninja. Inari awed. The blonde's eye twitched. You twerp, I am a real ninja, that's what I've been trying to tell you. She smiled after squashing her anger down. Well, now to tie up these losers. Naruto chuckled before asking Inari to get some rope. While the boy was distracted, she came across the page of the two attackers in the bingo book. They were both C-ranked missing nin from the mist. Though the reward wasn't much, she decided to make sure one of the villagers knew about it so they could collect the reward. As she sealed her book, Inari returned with several meters of rope and the two began to tightly restrain the two missing nin. Once the job at hand was complete, Naruto felt a sneeze coming along and she couldn't hold it back. They say that when you sneeze, it's because someone is talking about you somewhere. Inari stated in a matter-of-fact tone. You don't believe that, do you? The blonde asked. I bet it's Kakashi. If it was something dirty, I'll kill him. She thought to herself. Oh, and by the way, sorry about yesterday. She apologized. The blonde knew she was probably too harsh on the kid who was still dealing with the death of his father. Though Inari looked a little confused. I guess calling you a coward was pretty mean. She added, scratching the back of her head, a nervous habit of hers. Well, it's not true now, you were really brave. She praised, ruffling his head as she did. She heard sniffling and noticed that the little boy was crying once more, complaining that he promised he wouldn't and that she was going to make fun of him again. What are you talking about? You're happy. What's wrong with that? When you're happy, it's okay to cry. Really it is. She reasoned with an affectionate smile adorning her facial features. I can leave you in charge over here, can't I? She asked sneakily. Inari nodded his head in confirmation and she smiled. Good, because I'm heading off to the bridge now. Naruto grinned before running off towards the bridge at a brisk pace. The bridge wasn't too far from the house with her speed and Naruto soon made it to the bridge in time to see Sakura throw a kunai towards the Uchiha who was enclosed in a dome of mirror. Her eyes widened as she realized that the mirrors were made of ice. It must be a survivor of the bloodline purge from the hidden mist. If I can get the user to join Konohana, then we'll have another possible bloodline. She thought as she threw a shuriken at the ice user who had caught the kunai and was half outside one of the mirrors. Her shuriken knocked the ice user out of the mirror and onto the bridge. This is going to be tough. I need them to underestimate my skills, but I can't rescue Sasuke without them. Her thoughts continued before throwing a smoke bomb to cover her entry. Naruto Uzumaki is here, the blonde announced. Now that I'm here, everything will be alright. She smirked, to which Tazuna sighed and Sakura yelled, Naruto. You know how in stories the hero always shows up at the last minute and then kicks butt? Well, that's what I'm going to do right now. Naruto bragged, a hand on her hip as she pointed to the ice user. As she formed the seal for the shadow clones, she spotted Zabuza tossing 4 shuriken at her and her eyes widened in surprise. Dodge or deflect? She asked herself, though it seemed that it wasn't necessary, as the fake hunter nin had used senbon to deflect the shuriken. This is a battle, not a talent show. Don't let your opponent see your jutsu. Shinobi's art is deception. Always keep the enemy guessing. Even when executing a single jutsu, one must distract their enemy's attention, catch them off balance, and outmaneuver them. You just turned yourself into a human target when you enter a battle like that. Kakashi lectured and Naruto had to hide a smirk when she figured out that the copy ninja was helping with her deception. She cried out in response to lure the attention back to herself. When the attention seemed to focus on the ice user, she became curious as she felt the familiar chakra leak from the boy. Haku, what are you doing? Zabuza questioned accusingly. Zabuza, this one's, let me fight them my own way. Please, Haku answered, not looking back at Momochi. Bring it on, Naruto dared, changing her stance to increase her balance. I'm warning you, one way or another rip off that mask and take you apart. Naruto threatened, pointing at the ice user once more. The blonde warily watched as the two missing nin seemed to have a disagreement before Zabuza threatened the bridge builder if Kakashi were to leave. I'm practically on my own for this. As long as I can knock Sasuke unconscious, I'll be able to use better skills and perhaps persuade Haku to join Konohana. She thought, eyes narrowing in anticipation. That mask in your bogus story, you were with Zabuza all along. Do you think that you can get away with a stunt like that? The blonde yelled at Haku. I'm sorry, but as your sensei said, deceiving your opponent, catching them off guard, that is the art of the shinobi. Please don't take it personally. The ice user apologized and Naruto grimaced at the boy whom she thought was too kind to be at battle. A kunai flew past Haku's head and she turned to see Sasuke inside of the ice dome and covered with cuts. I haven't forgotten about you, not for an instant. Some warriors accept defeat gracefully, they know when they are beaten. Others do not, so be it. Let us finish our battle then, to the death. Haku preached before stepping back inside an ice mirror. Do not worry Naruto, we shall have out battle next. The ice user added. She studied the ice mirrors, as Haku seemed to teleport from one mirror to another as a speed that had the boy in all the mirrors at once. Her eyes widened as all the mirrors attacked the Uchiha who was trying to cover himself with his arms as to avoid serious damage. Using a little bit of her chakra, she was able to sense that the mirrors were impenetrable to physical attacks. That may be so, but if I release enough chakra from the inside, I should be able to get them to break. The best thing to do would be to try and get Sasuke out. She smirked before sneaking inside the ice dome and starting Sasuke. She ignored the comments from Kakashi and Sakura, as they were irrelevant considering the lack of knowledge they had of the ice mirrors in comparison. You are a complete loser. You're a shinobi, think carefully before you move. Sasuke scolded. What the heck is your problem? You should be thanking me for coming in here to help you. She yelled back. Naruto, if we're both inside here. Forget it, I've had it with your mistakes. The Uchiha growled. And I've had it with your attitude. She countered. She watched as Sasuke made the hand signs for a fire jutsu. Which one, she wasn't quite sure. What are you doing? She asked confused before realizing that she was the only one on the team that could really sense chakra. What do you think? These mirrors are made of ice, and what melts ice? Figure it out. The Uchiha growled. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke called before breathing fire at the ice, wished she could say, I told you so. But that would break her cover, so she settled yelling, it didn't work. Instead, they won't melt with that level of firepower. Haku informed Sasuke, who growled in response. Seconds later a barrage of senbon directed at the Uchiha and herself were launched. Most pierced her skin and muscles, some went straight through her body, but none punctured any vitals. At this rate, we're going to bleed to death. She thought, getting up once more to analyze the mirrors. Damn it, where's he attacking from? Where's the real one? She growled, her narrowed eyes, glancing over all the surrounding ice chunks. It's no use trying to follow me with your eyes. I will never be caught. Haku said neutrally. We need the Sharingan, but Sasuke hasn't awakened his. Fine, I guess I can make him awaken it. She thought before summoning some shadow clones. Ignoring Sasuke's warning, she leapt at one of the many mirrors while the shadow clones handled the rest. Gusts of wind passed her and Naruto knew that Haku was going between each mirror to pop each clone before knocking her to the ground. This is a traveling technique that utilizes mirror reflections that only reflect me. From my speed, you two look like you're standing still. Haku explained and the blonde grimaced. I can't die here. I still have a dream that I need to achieve. She muttered, looking down, half hoping that Sasuke and Haku didn't hear her. It is difficult for me to become a pure ninja. If it is possible, I do not want to kill you and I do not want to make you kill me. However, if you are going to fight me, I will kill my compassion with a blade and become a ninja. This bridge is a battleground, which leads to the dreams of many people. I will fight for my dream. And you will fight for your dream. Please do not hold any grudges. I want to protect an important person. I want to work for him, fight for him, and make his dreams come true. That is my dream. In order for it to come true, I will become a ninja. I will kill you. Haku ranted slightly and Naruto grinned at her current enemy's compassion and dedication. The two of the only things in Naruto's opinion made you a ninja. Sasuke-kun, Naruto, don't lose to a guy like that. She heard Sakura call out and the blonde gritted her teeth at the rudeness behind it, unintentional or not. Naruto was vaguely aware of Kakashi scolding the pink-haired girl, but most of the blonde's attention was on the boy in front of her. Just because I messed up the first time, doesn't mean I'm not going to try again. I'll try as many times as I need to. Naruto grinned as she formed the sign for the shadow clone once more. But yet again, one by one the clones popped out of existence and Naruto was shot down to the ground. I need to keep doing it. Sasuke needs to unlock the Sharingan to beat this guy. She growled to herself, getting up again. She looked over to see that the Uchiha in question had a frustrated look on his face as if he was thinking really hard. He must be starting to unlock it and noticing the differences. She inwardly smirked. It was a known fact that the Sharingan tended to be easier to awaken during a battle. One more time, she growled before summoning more shadow clones and leaping at the mirrors. From the corner of her eye, Naruto noticed Sasuke kicking water up as if he was testing his eyesight as the droplets fell. Come on, hurry, she thought as all the clones turned to clouds of smoke and she was attacked. Though this time it seemed that Sasuke was attacked too as she spotted him on his back when she landed. The surrounding mist thickened even more and Naruto could only guess that Zabuza was using his silent killing technique. Rushing forward, she continued her shadow clone assault on the mirrors in hopes to finish the battle before either of them fell unconscious or worse. Naruto heard the roar of a fire jutsu to her right, then another to her left a few seconds after, though she was still struck down, meaning that Sasuke had probably missed. Sitting up, she immediately noticed the singed left pant leg on Haku and had to hold back a smirk. We're so close, the blonde muttered, encouraging the Uchiha to ask her to continue. Naruto, can you still move? The boy asked and she turned to face him. Of course I can, I'm still okay. She grinned, becoming more enthusiastic now that something new was finally happening. Naruto watched as Sasuke signed a fire jutsu and inwardly smiled. Itachi would be proud, she thought before noticing that Sasuke was talking. Naruto, run, the boy shouted. She glanced at him confused, unable to understand. Get out of here and attack from the outside, Sasuke added once it was clear the blonde didn't quite get it. Okay, she replied, slightly startled at the request but began to run for the closest gap in the dome of ice. Will you be able to? Haku taunted, poised to attack. Naruto knew the injuries to her legs were drastically slowing her down, but she didn't care. If she could get outside, maybe, just maybe she could somehow gather enough chakra to break the dome of mirrors with alerting Sasuke to her true strength. Why didn't I think of that first? She inwardly growled, but it was too late. Being back at the academy had obviously dulled her senses and skills. Heard the fire jutsu being cast in hope that Sasuke had been able to hit Haku, though that hope was torn away from her once the masked boy stood in front of her before punching her in the forehead straight to the center of the dome. Damn it, she growled, but to her surprise Sasuke replied, that was good. Let's do it again, and her eyes widened before she nodded. Okay. She rushed forward to a gap in the dome, but the grunt of pain caused her a few precious seconds as she looked to see needles sticking from Sasuke's torso. But it was those few seconds that allowed Haku to get in front of her and strike her back with several senbon, each going deep into the muscles surrounding her spine. The pain became unbearable as she stumbled backwards and ultimately falling on her front. A scream filled their air, and her eyes widened as she realized it was Sakura. She willed her body to move, yet it seemed the needles embedded in her muscles were there to stop her from moving. Sakura, she's in trouble. She huffed, her body trembling with effort. Her effort finally paid off as the senbon lessened and allowed her control of her limbs once more. I'll bust us out of here, she growled to Sasuke, pulling herself up so she was no longer laying face first on the ground. Soon she stood up, wobbled slightly before steadying herself. You've exhausted my patience, Haku warned, but Naruto refused to listen. Gathering some over her chakra, she directed it towards the soles of her feet and took off to a gap in the dome. Haku appeared before her, but the blonde had back flipped away before racing around the dome with the boy matching her strides. Naruto, behind you, Sasuke warned, but it was too late. The blonde turned to see that Haku had already thrown more senbon towards her. Gritting her teeth, the needles pierced her vital organs by passing through the gaps in her rib cage. She knew she wouldn't die thanks to the power of her tenant, but that didn't mean she did not feel pain. Her vision began to blur and her ears rang, blocking out what Sasuke was saying, though she replied. I know, Sasuke, I know. She could tell that Sasuke was close to awakening the Sharingan, if the tang of metal hitting metal was anything to go by. Get up, loser, we've got to team up, the Uchiha called. She gave an affirmative grunt before curling her body slightly to loosen the needles piercing her front, after which she managed to haul herself to her feet in order to face the enemy. I know what we have to do, she replied. Before she knew it, the sound of metal hitting metal had started up again. She was pushed sideways to avoid some senbon aimed right at her, and she wondered why he'd put effort into saving her. The shove had unbalanced her and now she wasn't able to get up. Please move, she willed, but it seemed that it wouldn't work. He disappeared. Where'd he go? How can he just vanish? Naruto, you better not pass out. Come on, let's go, I can't keep protecting you like this. The Uchiha growled slightly. Well then don't, I never asked for your help. She groaned in reply. No one really helps me anyways. She thought before her vision finally disappeared and she couldn't hear or feel anything anymore. When she awoke next, her body felt numb. The Nine Tails chakra probably had something to do with it, but it most likely came from the shock of seeing Hiku down on the ground and Sasuke with a chest full of senbon. You always get in the way, Naruto. It never fails. Sasuke heaved. The blonde's eyes widened in disbelief that the Uchiha was still standing. She probably would, yet she had a demon inside of her. You should see the look on your face. You look like a total loser. Sasuke smirked in a rasping voice. Why'd you save me? Why did you do it? She asked, eyes wide and trembling as she remembered the faceless villagers, taunting and hurting her. I don't know why, I just did. He sounded a little annoyed and Naruto had to hold back a flinch in her vulnerable state. I hated you. The Uchiha admitted. Then why did you save me? It doesn't make any sense. Why did you protect me? The blonde asked, slowly standing up, fists clenched. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you to save me. She growled when the boy gave no response. I don't know. My body just moved. There was no time to think. Sasuke admitted, sadness lacing his voice as he spoke. It was then that the boy lost his balance and Naruto moved to catch him before the Uchiha fell to the ground. He's still out there. My brother. I'd promised myself I'd stay alive until I killed him. Naruto, don't let your dream die. Sasuke admitted, looking and sounding more lost and vulnerable than any Uchiha should before he closed his eyes and went limp in the blonde's grasp. As Sasuke went limp, Naruto became stiff and ridged. It took several moments before she'd realized what had happened before she could move into to give the Uchiha a hug. I'm so sorry, Itachi. I'm so sorry. This is my entire fault. Naruto clenched her eyes shut to hold back tears as she promised herself she'd never cry again. Is this the first time you've seen a friend die in battle? This is part of what it means to be a ninja. Hiku stated as he slid back into an ice mirror. Shut up, she warned Hiku as she laid Sasuke down on the ground. I hated you to Sasuke, I was sworn to protect you, but… She trailed off as she felt chakra flooding her body, and not hers. No, this isn't the first time I've seen a friend die, but you'll still pay. The blonde growled, grinding her teeth in rage. Red chakra flooded her body and expelled itself, becoming visible as she hunched over Sasuke's body. The chakra began to spiral and intensify, becoming more and more demonic. She felt her body changing. Her wounds began to heal, the senbon removed themselves from her body, her canines and nails became elongated, and her senses heightened themselves. Turning to face Hiku, she watched as the boy flinched in the mirror. Going down on all fours, Naruto charged the boy, who in turn threw 3 needles, all of which were deflected by the swirling chakra. The boy, surprised, flew to another mirror to turn the tables on the girl-turned-demon. From there, Hiku threw senbon from all the mirrors. The needles struck hard and fast, but like before, the needles removed themselves from the blonde's back. Naruto charged at the mirror holding Hiku and smashed into pieces, leaving Hiku to strike from above, though she spun away from the attack at the last minute. Leaping forward, the blonde was able to grab a hold of Haku's arm and released a surge of demonic chakra, cracking the ice mirror. With a single punch, Naruto had shattered the mirrors, and broke Haku's mask, all while making the boy fly like a rag doll. Hiku managed to get up to face Naruto as the girl charged once more as his mask slipped off his face, pieces at a time. The blonde felt a sudden awareness as she saw the boy's face for the first time, recognizing it instantly. Pulling her punch at the last possible second, she managed to calm herself so that the demonic chakra left her body in its entirety. Why do you not strike? Don't you want to avenge your comrade's death by killing me? Hiku asked in curiosity. At that, the blonde growled slightly and punched the boy as she would to smack sense into a subordinate of hers. Though the punch wasn't too hard, Hiku still fell and she had to guess it was chakra exhaustion in addition to her punch. You know, that won't do. You're still holding back. If that is all the strength you can put into it, then you'd never be able to avenge your comrade. Maybe he didn't mean as much to you as you pretend. Haku taunted. To show mercy to those who oppose the one you serve, to allow his enemies to live when you could strike them down, this is not compassion. It is a betrayal of your life's very purpose. For what reason do you exist then? You are of use to no one, your life has no meaning, and it is mere existence. Day after day of pain and struggle, signifying nothing. The boy added when Naruto didn't reply. I think you're forgetting something. I never said that I was going to kill you. In fact, I know Sasuke isn't dead, for I can feel his chakra. Though it's weaker, it's still there and not near deadly levels yet. I merely got mad as there is a lot riding on his shoulders at the moment that I have been assigned to keep track of. Though I assume that you are talking about yourself? Naruto asked with a sad smile. You're right, I am speaking for myself, and this day has shown I am no longer of any use to Zabuza. Haku confirmed, mirroring the same sad smile. Zabuza, huh? Why do you choose to follow him? I'm sure there are others who would love to have your loyalty. I know I would, the blonde asked, becoming more serious. There were once others who mattered to me. My father and my mother. I was born in the land of water in a small village where the snow was deep in the winter. My parents were farmers and very poor, our life was hard, but we were content. My parents were good to each other and kind to me. Yes, we were happy once, but then everything changed. Because of something that happened long before I was born. Something I had no control over. Haku started. The bloodline wars? Naruto asked, slightly uncertain. She'd heard from Jiraiya's sources about the civil war that went on in the Hidden Mist village. Purging all of those with bloodlines, yet she'd not been able to meet a survivor. Well, that was until now. Haku nodded in confirmation and the blonde gulped as the boy went on with his story. My mother was successful in hiding her bloodline before meeting and falling in love with a simple farmer where she thought she could happily live out the rest of her days. She was wrong. My father had seen, and so he knew our secret, my mother's and mine. When at last I was myself again, I was no longer myself. My father and mother were gone, but I know something else had been taken from me. Something even more important, and that is when I truly despaired. My purpose. In the entire world, there was no one who needed me. I was unnecessary. Then Zabuza came and looked at me, and his eyes were not filled with hate or fear. He did not shun me for my strangeness, indeed my special powers were just what he wanted. He made me necessary again. I was happy. I have failed you, Zabuza. I am like a weapon that has broken and is of no further use. The boy finished and began to step forward. Naruto, kill me. Before getting the chance to reply, her eyes widened and she looked around before turning back to Haku. There are a bunch of weak chakra signals at the end of the bridge. Assuming that's Gato, I believe that we no longer have a reason to fight. I have an idea, but we need to stop Kakashi. Naruto informed the boy before using a Shushin to teleport in front of Kakashi. She knew that Haku felt it as well, that Zabuza was in danger. However, Naruto's goal was to stop Kakashi from killing and Haku from dying. Not even seconds after teleporting in front of Kakashi, she felt the pain of the Chidori pierce her chest. It was her instincts that stopped Kakashi's hand from piercing any vital organs, though it was highly probable that a Chidori through the chest would not kill her. It's okay, Kakashi. I'm not going to die. She attempted to comfort her comrade as she moved his hand away from her. She tasted the iron of her blood but refused to let anyone know she'd bitten her lip to ease the pain. She turned to see a stunned pair of Rouge ninjas and she smiled softly. Gato's on the bridge with a bunch of thugs. He's not going to pay you, too. He never was, she explained before her eyes blurred slightly. Her knees felt weak, but before she could fall, she felt two strong hands pick her up as if she were a bride. People might get the wrong idea if they saw this. She joked to lighten the mood. Naruto, are you okay? And where's Sasuke? The call from Sakura reminded her of the Uchiha that was unconscious over where their battle took place. He's unconscious, but will need medical attention soon, she managed to say, causing Tazuna to lead Sakura over to Sasuke's body. How do you know that Gato's coming, brat? Zabuza asked in suspicion, hefting his sword onto his shoulder. I can feel his presence, small, selfish, confident. Along with 100 mid to high genin level thugs. Does that sound about right? She asked once again, stunning Zabuza. Well, I'll be damned. This brat is good. The #1 hyperactive knucklehead ninja title doesn't really suit you, does it? The missing nin commented, a smile hidden beneath the bandages covering the lower half of his face. I have a proposition for you, but I have to explain it, and more, somewhere private. If you'll join us back to Konohana, I can provide you with more than you two will get living as Rouges. Naruto replied with an innocent smile, contradicting the manipulative things she was saying. Did quite a job on you, didn't he, Zabuza? I must say, I'm disappointed. Gato grinned as he used his walking stick to make his small and plump stature seem a little bit taller. Gato? I don't understand? What is all this? Why are you here? And who are those thugs you've brought with you? Zabuza asked sarcastically, sending a knowing look to the blonde still being carried by Kakashi. Well, you see, there has been a slight change in plans. According to the new plan, you die right here on this bridge, Zabuza. Gato replied, not catching the sarcasm as he tried to sound intimidating, and Naruto desperately tried to hold back her laughter. You're too expensive, so I've decided to take you off the payroll. Of course, even these thugs I've brought with me cost something, so if you could manage to slaughter a few of them before they take you down, I'd appreciate it. Gato continued while Naruto gave a discreet nod to both Zabuza and Haku. It's a good thing you stopped me. I was going to disable his arms if just Haku had gotten in the way. Kakashi admitted, and the blonde turned to face the silver-haired man. Feeling better? She asked, looking into his mist-colored eyes with her ocean blue ones. I swear one of these days you're going to give me a heart attack with your recklessness. Kakashi replied before they both turned their attention to the missing nin and the tiny man face off. Well, Kakashi, it would seem that our fight is at an end. Since I am no longer in Gato's employ, it seems that Tazuna is safe. Zabuza said, looking at the copy nin before giving a hidden smile to Naruto. Yay, I suppose you're right. Kakashi replied, facing the mob with the Rouge nin. With a nod of agreement, both Kakashi and Zabuza charged forward, the former with a kunai and the latter with his sword. Together, they cut through the army of thugs and killed Gato with surprising ease. Though the remainders of the thugs weren't too happy with their meal ticket being killed off, yet the villagers showed up in time with weapons and effectively scared off the last remains of Gato's thugs. It had all become a blur to Naruto, but the thing she knew for sure was that Sasuke was up already, the morale of the villagers had risen tremendously, and that was the last they'd ever see of Gato. And now that the climax of the day had ended, the blonde closed her eyes and fell unconscious with a smile on her face. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.